Okay, it's 4 o'clock on April the 23rd, 2019, and we'll call this meeting to order and ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Okay, saying none. We did have a session in closed, and I do have a recommendation coming out of closed that I'm going to read right now. We have a recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wynton declare lands having a frontage on Hamilton Street of 11 meters and a depth of 20 meters, and which are more particularly described in Part 3 of the draft reference plan as surplus, and that the Council of the Township of Center Wynton authorizes the Mayor and Clerk to execute an agreement of purchase and sale between the Corporation of the Township of Center Wynton and Union Gas for the surplus lands as outlined in Report IS 2019-18 dated April 23rd, 2019. Mover for that recommendation, Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor Foster. Any discussion on that? All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to presentations, announcements, confirmation of the agenda. I have a recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wynton confirm the agenda for its meeting held April 23rd, 2019. Mover for that, Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favor? And that's carried. So no delegations, moving on to consideration of reports. So first thing on the agenda is the Elora. Oh, I skipped right by confirmation of minutes. Good thing I have two of you there. Wow. We have three sets of minutes there. Committee of the Whole, February the 6th. It's their budget. Committee of the Whole, March the 18th. And Committee of the Whole, March the 27th. And I have a recommendation that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meetings held February 6, 2019, March 18th, 2019, and March 27th, 2019 be adopted as circulated. Mover for that recommendation, Councillor McElwain, seconded by Councillor McCrae. Any discussion on those? All in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to consideration of the report. The first item that we have on the agenda is the Elora Skatepark final design. Exciting project moving forward. And we have our Managing Director of Community Services, Pat Newson, to give us a bit of an introduction.
Thank you. So I'm going to do a presentation, and then that's going to be followed by our consultant from New Line Skateparks, Bill Gurney. And then we've got OPP Officer Jennifer Shantz, and then there's also a delegation from the public. So strap on your seatbelts. Here we go. Skatepark. All right. It's a very exciting project, as Mayor Linton has mentioned, and the building, it's a building of a concrete skate park. I have two objectives today. One is for the council to make a decision on the location of the park, and second, to make a decision on the preferred design for the park. A similar presentation was made to the CSAC committee on April 10th, and CSAC made the following recommendations to council. That the Community Services Advisory Committee recommends to council that they approve option 2 on the location map as the preferred site for the Elora Skate Park. And further, that the committee recommends approval of Design Direction 1 as the concept design for the new Elora Skate Park, as presented at the Community Services Advisory meeting held April 10th, 2019. Timing is important because we really hope to make a decision on the location and the design of this park in April, so that we can stay on schedule, go to final design, construction documents, break ground in June, and have our grand opening at the end of September. So, I thought I'd show you what a skate park looks like, a concrete skate park. So we don't have one in Central Wellington right now. This one is actually an example of one at Banff National Park, designed and built by the same company that has been hired for our park. And these types of parks are suitable for skateboards, scooters, and BMX bikes. So just to outline what we're going to cover today in my presentation, just the background on the concept and evolution of the park. My goal here is to bring you up to speed, especially for new councillors, on the project that is already at the design phase. We're going to talk a little bit about the funding for the park, the options for the site in Elora, the McDonald funding agreement, the RFP that went out to select our design builder, the location selection at the Elora Community Center, and finally, Bill will be up here to talk about the skate park design. I've also invited OPP Constable Jennifer Shantz. She's the Youth Resiliency Officer, and she's going to share some information from the perspective of the police on selecting the park location. So the initial introduction to the park from a staff perspective was the crowdfunding campaign in 2014. These are some significant milestones to date. The Centre Wellington Skatepark Association has been working on this project for quite a few years, and they have been instrumental in making this project a reality in our community and should be commended for all of their hard work that they have done to date. Now that the project is moving forward to design and construction, it falls upon the staff in the Community Services Department to ensure the project is built on time, on budget, and properly on municipal property. So following the identification study that was done in 2017, which identified the Elora Community Center grounds. Then the committee applied for a Jack McDonald Fund and received that in 2018, which provided enough funding for the project to go forward. And then the consultants were hired through an RFP process. The funding, where is it coming from? The committee, the Skatepark Association, have fundraised $62,092. There's development charges funding available of $157,500, township reserves $7,112, and the McDonald funding that they received was for $203,296, which gives us a $430,000 total for the project. Our design builder is spending $362,000 of that, leaving $68,000 for other township expenses, HST. We did a land survey, the geotech, landscaping, signage, and a contingency for the project. Taking you back to 2016, the siting of the park at the site is a different process than picking a park location. However, SKA Design Landscape Architect Planning Study was done in 2016 at a cost of about $9,000, and they studied 4 locations: the Elora Lions Park, the Elora District Community Center, Bissell Park, and Southridge Park. All of those 4 sites were considered, and in the end, on February 21st, 2017, Council made a resolution to select, well, you can read it here, but they basically selected Elora Community Center for the building of a BMX skateboard facility, and to pursue that with the vision that it would go on those grounds. Through this process, the township had not committed to the location at the Elora Community Center through this study. When this site was identified, there were concerns voiced by the neighbors who are concerned about the noise of a skate park near their homes. Selecting the specific site for skate park is a challenge for most communities. It is a fantastic addition to the park amenities for a community, but is not like siting a playground or a sports field. Skate parks come with their own set of challenges such as noise, youth-adult behaviors, need for youth to have independent space while considering too much privacy, graffiti, vandalism, hours of use, access, parking, emergency response are all things that are considered when siting a park at a location. My slides are out of order. Did I? Oh, thank you. I was like, wait, where's that coming from? So when they picked the Elora Community Center, there were some opportunities that were really great about this site and a few constraints. This is why this site was selected and approved by council. Good opportunities for visibility, parking. It's a central location in Elora. It's away from the road. It's convenient. There's room to grow if you wanted to add a pump track or a BMX park. It's easy for drop-off point for parents, access to the community center and facilities, and it consolidates a lot of the recreation and leisure services at this facility. Some of the constraints identified with the site: there are some residential houses close by, existing facilities may need to be relocated to accommodate the park, and we may need to remove trees. So when we signed the Elora, or sorry, the McDonald funding agreement, it was an agreement between the township and the Skatepark Association for their $203,296. So once this was moving forward, staff were required to recommend a location at the Elora Community Center grounds. So this agreement outlines the township's obligations and the Skatepark Association's obligations, and it was signed in October 2018. Right out of that agreement, it states, the township shall determine the precise location of the lands, taking into consideration the multiple users of the skate park, the potential future growth of the skate park components, and complementary recreation design for the site and the Elora Community Center as a whole. So staff are looking at many factors in trying to find the best site for the park at this location. The public process was when we picked the Elora Community Center, and now it was up to a technical decision where we should site the park. So we had a request for proposal and awarded in December 2018. New Line Skateparks, a full design and construction firm specializing in the development of integrated concrete skate parks and other progressive skatable environments. From concept through to completion and beyond, the New Line team helps communities across the world realize their dreams. They are Canada's most experienced and respected municipal skate park design build team with over 270 highly recognized projects across Canada, US, and Europe over the past 17 years. Bill Gurney, who will be up here a little bit later, is the lead project manager for New Line Skateparks and is our leader for the Elora Skate Park project. He's a lifelong skateboarder, licensed landscape architect. He has 20 years experience with commercial, industrial, and institutional landscape design projects, residential subdivision, and park open space planning. He has 16 years of specialized practice working in municipal skate park projects and design and project management of over 70 municipal skate park developments across the US and Canada. So our first step with our consultants was to pick a location at the Elora Community Center. So if you look at this map, the dark outlined building is the current footprint of the Elora Community Center. The dashed line is a potential future growth of the Elora Community Center. So if we were ever to add an ice pad, or there's been talk of an indoor turf facility at the Elora Community Center, we need to leave enough space for that. We need to learn when we look at the site. So we have option 1, which is close to David Street. Option 2, which is sort of about just in front of second base, going towards third base of the ball diamond. And then option 3 is 2 smaller parks, and there's one gigantic tree right in the middle of those grounds that we have no intention of taking down to build a skate park. We'd have people tied to the tree. Okay, so we're going to learn from the Fergus skate park in our selection of the site. We've had constant complaints about the noise from residents from that skate park. It's close to the residents, and staff get complaints, and our long-term plan is when we approve the site plan, master plan for the sportsplex, is to actually move that park down the road to behind the building away from the residents. We can learn from Guelph. They located their skate park at Deer Path Park, which is too close to residents, and later had to move the park because of the noise. We can learn from Acton. They located their skate park without considering the future growth of their facility, and then they built a park and then moved it, spent another $1 million and built it again outside of where the building is now. So there's lots of experience to look at. So we have to plan for the potential growth of the ECC facility and the added parking that will be needed when that facility grows. This is in the future. No, you have not approved that growth. So just so you know, this is us thinking about 10 years down the road, what do we need? The 3 sites that were picked, we walked the sites with the consultant to look at all 3 options. The CW Skatepark Association has identified location 1 or around this location, which is the one by David Street, as their preferred site. They have always stated since their concept of building this park here that that is their preferred site. At the same time, residents voiced concerns about the park near their homes. So the township needs to consider the impact of this park on everyone, including the residents, and the township must consider all factors in making this decision. We looked at who the skate park users, our consultants' information. We had geotech survey work done, looking at the park size of the design that was preferred, the safety and visibility, so we will hear from the OPP, SEPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, public feedback, future potential growth of Elora Community Center, current park amenities and their adjacency to the skate park, complementary recreation design, and trees. All of those things were considered. We were fortunate on our team to have Matthew Allan as our project leader on this project. He couldn't be here tonight. He's actually on vacation, lucky him. But he is our urban forestry project manager. And Matthew has a master's degree in landscape architecture. Prior to his position with Centre Wellington, his experience was managing the design of municipal parks, including skate parks. Prior to that, he was a lead designer and landscape architect for custom playground design and construction. So he's very experienced in park layout for youth and kids, and we lean on him a lot in our decision as to where to put this park. So if we look at each option, so option 1 is the location near David Street. The advantages is that it's visible, access for park users is good, design preferred, the design that is preferred will fit in this space. It's tight fit, but it will fit. And there's good construction access. The challenge is it's close to the residential properties, which has a noise conflict problem. No future growth of this space of amenities adjacent to the skate park. It's almost too close to David Street where it's going to be positioned, which can cause increased loitering on the roadway and sidewalk, which could impede traffic and safety. Youth will use the Optimist Pavilion, which is right next to this park, as their hangout and may disrupt the enjoyment to other park users. And families with smaller children will see and hear things that are not age appropriate, and this could lead to significant complaints. The playground is right next to the skate park, or would be in that location. Option 2 is the preferred location by township staff. I think I mentioned option 1 was the Skate Park Association preference. So the pros to this location, it's away from the roadway, which is safe for vehicle traffic and youth access to the park. The distance from the residential properties, it makes it more compatible for potential noise issues. It's good visibility while allowing youth enhanced space. Design preferred will fit in the space, good construction access, and great access to future building expansion and the south parking lot, and it allows us some space if we were to add a BMX track in the future near the skate park. Challenges is there's a perception in the public and the Skate Park Association that this location would be unsafe. The perception that youth are excluded due to the location distance from the other park amenities. It always feels like that when you're building something. If you've ever been to a neighborhood and you see a grocery store way out in the middle of it, looks like the farmland, but you come back 5 years later and all the homes have been added to it and it looks like it's in the right place. So that's a challenge, but it's why we've selected the site that we can build out to. Option 3 was also identified, but not considered as viable because the preferred design park would not fit in this space. So some of the other things that we've looked at is a future pump track, as I mentioned, which is a BMX or mountain bike path near a skate park. It attracts similar type users. In order to enhance safety, coming to council soon will be a security camera policy, and we would like to install a surveillance camera at both skate parks, this one and the one in Fergus, to improve safety of those users. Motion sensor light, which would go on at night to alert anybody in the area that there's people there when the park is closed. Obviously signage for park hours. We've looked at the access on the path. We would make it wide enough for OPP and emergency access. You can speak to the OPP officer about their opportunities to increase their patrols once this park is built. There will be tree removal and pruning, which I will show you in the next couple slides. And the gorge is fenced completely all along it, so there's no chance kids will then wander down into the gorge. It's fenced all the way across. So 100% satisfaction. Staff are 100% satisfied with the recommendation to select option number 2, and that decision was supported by the CSAC committee. So if I'm standing where our future park is, and I'm looking out to County Road, Wellington County Road 7, that is the road that you can see. So those cars, I can see the car can see me. Our intent is there's a lot of scrub kind of trees ash that are dead, poplar trees right along that fence. They're small. They will be removed. We will take the 2 large trees there and prune them and lift them for better visibility and for their health. If I turn 90 degrees to my right, I'm looking at the rest of the park and a clear vision of County Road 7. I turn another 60 degrees and I'm looking at the back of the Elora Community Center and David Street, which you can see the park clearly. From our staff coming out and doing an inspection out of the back of the building, it's clear visibility as well. And then I'm looking at the forest or the woods and the gorge. So that's your 360 Google visit around the site. Another question that's been brought forward is, why don't we just remove the ballpark and put the skate park there? This is a visual here of how much the ballpark was used in 2018 and the revenue that it brings in. So it's a very well utilized park. So when we look at expanding the Elora Community Center, at that time we would have to find another location for another ballpark before we did that. It is still a popular used park. Next steps, hopefully we can come to a council decision tonight on the park. New Line Skateparks will be there here to present about the design. So I'm going to ask Bill to come on up. And we have Constable Jennifer Shantz, which I mentioned. We want to break ground June 2019. And I think that's pretty good for me. I'd really like to turn this over to Bill. So that's sort of the background on how we selected option 2 as the site. And Bill, they're going to put your presentation up. Come on up.
Welcome, Bill. So just for council, for you to know, we'll go through Bill and then the constable's presentation, then the delegation, then we'll open it up for questions at the end of all of it, okay? Welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Pat, thanks for the great lead-in, very thorough. My name is Bill Gurney. I'm the Design Project Manager with New Line Skateparks. We are pleased and honored to have been selected by Township of Center Wellington for the services we're providing, complete turnkey delivery of a completed cast concrete site-built municipal skate park. As Pat mentioned, my background, New Line Skateparks were a company that focuses exclusively on planning and design and construction of municipal concrete skate parks. We've been doing this for 17 or 18 years, recognized as an industry leader in Canada. Myself, I come from a landscape architecture background and then have found myself specializing in the world of skateboard parks for the last 15 or 16 years. So I'll really kind of, follow up where Pat left off and just sort of talk about the process, at least since our formal engagement earlier on. So if we want to jump ahead with the slide. Oh, is it me?
Push to the right or left. Yeah.
Okay, I can handle that.
There you go.
All right. So I won't take more time than is necessary, but what's really, kind of cool and interesting about working on these skateboard park projects is there's no set of guidelines or rules about the parks. It's not like coming into town and designing for you, say, a soccer field or a baseball diamond where it's dimension X by dimension Y. Not a lot of room for creative exploration. The skateboard parks are interesting in a different way because they come in all different sizes, all different shapes, and all different kind of qualities and characteristics. And we're literally working on parks from where the construction budget is, $150,000, $200,000, all the way up to $2 million skate park construction contracts. So what's interesting and the opportunity to bring something unique and make a custom solution for every single project, it's really based on 3 parameters primarily. The budget, of course, always. Bigger budgets build bigger parts. The site location, and Pat talked a lot about that as well, certainly coming from a landscape architecture background, site analysis, opportunities and constraints of site development is always a big sort of driver of the design direction. And then likewise, there's always this fun opportunity to visit with the communities all across Canada where we build these parks, meet with the youth group, conduct one-on-one interactive design workshop sessions, and really start to brainstorm the design idea so that every park can be customized for every community. So that's really kind of where we picked up from there. Pat talked in detail about the site selection and the site location process, so I won't revisit that in any way, but we've certainly had our eyes and ears on the site when we responded to the request for proposals. The request for proposals had within it the geotechnical soils investigation, the site topography. So we knew a good deal of the lay of the land, before getting engaged with the work and having been selected for the contract. From there, our first sort of formal engagement with the community, the youth community here in Elora, was our February 12th design workshop. Myself, I attended and facilitated that meeting. We also followed it up with a supplementary session at the district high school. This is how it was advertised and promoted in the community. We do a lot of these workshops. Our two primary exercises, because we really want to make them interactive and get a lot of takeaway, was we did a feedback form. And we also did like a sticker dot sort of, we call it a terrain priority dotmocracy exercise. There's the two main exercises. So out of the feedback forms, we got a sort of a deeper sense of who the community of riders is, the age group, the gender representation, whether they're into skateboard or BMX or scooter, et cetera, et cetera. So just a little bit of a deeper dive into who specifically the local demographic is that we're designing to. So I'll actually jump forward. And we had 3 of these posters, and all the participants got these sticker dots, and their objective there was to put the sticker dots onto the features and the style of park that they were really excited about or looking forward to, that kind of thing. So we kind of put that in a bit of it's not a perfect science, but it is sort of an empirical takeaway from these design workshop meetings. So that really kind of drove the direction of our design, and then we went away for about, I don't know, a period of about 4, maybe 6 weeks after that. A little synopsis we provided to the township there, really trying to build a case for why the design goes in a specific direction versus a different specific direction, really. So then that was the first of 2 opportunities that we created. The second of 2 opportunities that we created was this design alternatives presentation that happened on March 20th, not too long ago, about a month ago. Again, it was advertised and promoted in the community. And then what we did was we took actually 3 different preliminary design directions, and we illustrated them with 2-dimensional graphics, and we annotated them with legends, and also, so this was design direction number 1, annotated site plan with a legend. And then because there's a limitation, skateboard parks are very 3-dimensional type facilities, and they really do read best as sort of a 3-dimensional model. But in the spirit of design exploration and community consultation, at this stage we just render the parks in 2-dimensional hand-drawn graphics. That way we can put a few different ideas into the community, in front of the community, get some feedback what they like and don't like, that kind of thing. So that's how the whole presentation was put together, sort of at that stage of design development. This is the second of 2 design direction alternatives we presented that night. Again, supported with some inspiration and precedent imagery. This one was kind of the largest of the 3, kind of based on the most simplistic geometry and the most simplistic construction, but the largest footprint on the site and probably the lowest cost per square foot. So that was the second of 2 design alternatives, and then we prepared the 3rd design alternative right here. So this is what we took to the meeting on March 20th. This is our design alternatives workshop. And we also used this feedback form where workshop participants could select, my favorite design option is 1, 2, or 3, as well as provide some critical comments about what they don't like and or don't like with respect to any specific option. So that's kind of where we came out of. I don't have the exact vote tally with me. There was a clear consensus preference that night for design option number 1. So following out of the March 20th meeting, we kind of picked up on design option 1, and then we sort of took that design specifically and worked it a little bit more and took it to the next stage of design development, which is construction of a 3-dimensional model and accurate quantity takeoff, so we can present the township with our cost estimate and reaffirm to all of ourselves that we are indeed on budget, given the nature of the project as a stipulated price design build contract with a not to exceed value. So design option number 1, and then what I will do is I will go right ahead to the 3-dimensional graphics because they look cooler and they read better, and it's just easier to describe the design a little bit better. So I've got 3 slides to show you. The first slide is again sort of represented in 2-dimensional, but it's annotated with all the legend of the features. Is there a laser? No.
There's no laser on that.
And then, yeah, and then here, you know what? I'll just reference the A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
And then we've got it represented now as a digital 3D model, so we can look at it and take snapshots from it from any multiple angle. It's a greater tool for visualizing the park, the size and the shape of the feature, and the arrangement and spatial arrangement of the features and stuff like that. So there's a 3-dimensional representation of the whole park. Now, we can go back to those slides at any point in time, but maybe this is the best one to describe. So the little context plan on the left shows you where we are at the south end of the site. That was site location option number 2, out to the outfield, between the outfield and the bush line, recognizing that there will be a future expansion potentially of the arena right there as well. So the design itself, here we are. It's a bit of a wedge shape, a little wider on the west and a little narrower on the east. There are 3 main elevation changes in the park. The middle of the park, where you see features A, E, and F, that will be at grade. On the west side, we build the park up by importing fill up to a height of 4 feet, and we create a platform that's 4 feet higher. This gives us sort of feature A, B, and C, which acts very like a very much back and forth half-pipe mini ramp, 4 feet high. It has the advantage of the bold end on the far west side, which adds a lot of skateability and play value. You also get features B and C, which are different shaped hip features that go into and out of that mini ramp section. So jumping from the far west to the far east, that platform would be elevated 2.5 feet off the ground. 2.5 feet is the equivalent of 5 6-inch stair risers. So it's really replicating a set of stairs that you would see in the urban landscape. Skateboarders love. So that's what you're seeing around G and H, is basically a set of 5 stairs. Features that supplement that are the bank ramps. Anything that's rendered in a tan color is a ramp versus a flat gray color, which is a level floor slab. So there's a 5-stair set. G and H provide ramps, also a rail down, a hubble ledge down. Both of those are positioned that you can hit them either for the left side or the right side, so really versatile in their placement. G is an up gap. So that's really describes the west side of the design as well as the east side of the design. Through the middle, which is at grade, we've got 3 main features. D is like a tabletop, very popular feature when we did our outreach there. And then E and F are just a flat ground rail and flat ground ledge features, which are, you know, super common in many different skate parks and really popular elements. And in a nutshell, that is the design, and we've taken it to this point. We delivered the 3D renderings to the township last week, as well as, like I say, our first detailed pass at the budget. Many variables at play, but one real positive note from last week is we've reaffirmed not only the township but ourselves that we would able to, you know, follow through and deliver the design and construction of this park on budget. Which is really the end of my presentation.
Okay, great.
Great, thanks very much, Bill.
Yeah.
That was exciting.
Do you want to just sit here, and then if there's questions, I'm available.
Sure thing.
So, Jennifer.
So we'll call Constable Jennifer Shantz, Youth Resiliency at Center Wellington. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. If you would mind popping back to
Sure.
the slide
My
with your
presentation?
presentation. Yes.
We want the map.
Just the map.
Options map. Please. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. So my piece, how I became involved, is I was contacted by Pat, and I was asked to attend the location and just provide some feedback from a safety standpoint from the OPP into things that I could possibly see as challenges for either location. So I attended the site and I walked the site with Pat and Matthew. And we spent some time and we talked about both locations. For the first option, some of the things I noted, I felt that because option 1 is fairly close to David Street, and my piece, my expertise right now, and for the last 3 years, has been youth resiliency. I work in all of the elementary schools in Wellington County, as well as some of the high schools, and I work with a lot of youth. So they are my sort of target audience right now. And I certainly can, they like to gather and loiter and do different things. I've been a police officer for 17 years, so I have a significant amount of experience as well to rely on. So with it being close to David Street, I felt that it would create some possible impediment of traffic from Wellington Road 7 onto David Street. It didn't appear to be a fairly large distance between the roadway sidewalk and then into where that site would begin. So that was one of my observations. The second observation was the Optimus Pavilion that is on site, as well as the
There's a playground.
Playground
and
equipment.
basketball, yep.
that is located. Being in both of these being fairly close to the skate park, I can visualize a lot of activities and gatherings under the pavilion, as well as behaviors, as we may all want to imagine. Kids, when they are not supervised directly by adults, can begin to use different languages, verbiage, etc., that could be very offensive to younger families that would be utilizing either the pavilion site or the actual playground equipment, because it is a fairly within a close vicinity. Option 2, I really I preferred, because it is still quite visible within the park. We talked about the visual sight line right to Wellington Road 7. The cleanup of that shrubs
yep.
and bush area really wouldn't impede. There would still be quite a sight line from Wellington Road 7 to option 2. We talked about the accessibility for emergency services as well as OPP to patrol around. There would be an area that they would be able to patrol directly around to the site as well, and we wanted to think of access for paramedics and fire as well, should that be needed, and that wasn't an issue. There was a tower site. We talked about having mounted lighting, so at nighttime, if there was anyone accessing the skate park after hours, the lights would identify and allow officers on patrol to see that the lights are on, and they would be able to go into that area and see who's back there, etc. With being close to the gorge and being fenced off, I didn't feel that would be a safety issue, as it would be fenced off prior to the site being completed. It already is.
It is,
fenced off at this point. The other location with Site 2, I felt was just some feedback that I provided was just, it was quite visible within the park for people. If they had anyone playing at the Ball Diamond or playing in other areas of the park, you still do have a visual sight line to the skate park area. Without the traffic piece with option 1, for me, with impeding either traffic from Wellington Road 7 or David Street, and your increase, because you will have an increase of youth accessing the skate park, whether they're standing on David Street watching jumps, rides, whatever's happening on the skate park, and the noise as well, which has been presented. So that was just some feedback that I provided to Pat for this presentation.
Great, thanks, Constable Shantz. So now we have one delegation registered. Oh, we have two. Oh, we have another one. Okay. So we have two delegations here, Laura and Paul. So we'll have Laura come first. And just wanted to let you know that we are pretty strict on the time because we do have a really long council meeting going ahead. So you have 10 minutes. You don't have to take the whole 10 minutes, but if you hit the 10 minutes, don't be offended, but I will cut you off. Okay?
Great.
Welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much. Carrie, I wasn't sure if you got the PDF. Okay, wonderful. Thanks. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Thank you. That's mine.
Is Montreal playing? Nothing. Go Boston. I'm sorry, I tried to send it earlier today, but it was returned because it was too big, so I had to send it as a PDF. Yeah, a few megabytes over. Is that it? All right, I will begin. Yes, I'm sure it will come up. Fantastic. Okay, I will just begin with our request appeal, and that is that the Council of the Township of Central Wellington defer approving the preferred site for the Elora Elora Skate Park on the community center grounds until they've had a chance to consider and discuss the results of the Elora Skate Park location option preference survey, which was put out last week online on social media, and the new information presented in this report, or to implement an official township public survey for the purpose of using the public feedback as part of the decision process for final placement. All right. I'm just going to address a few of the key factors in the community services team decision for the final placement and their decision to disregard option 1 and to recommend option 2. First, I'll just discuss quickly the technical data requirements for the preferred skate park design footprint will be met at option 1. I've blocked out option 3 there, so we're not confused about anything. We're just talking about those two options. I'll also mention that the geological considerations for option 1 also deem it feasible for building the skate park as the preferred design that Bill Gurney presented at an equivalent cost and with an equal footprint. The process undertaken by the consultant Sean Kelly, who did the original landscape design in 2016, included the following considerations, and I quote, safe, secure site, provisions of high visibility, attention to safety, and access to municipal staff. I'm going to share a quote that Sean Kelly gave us when we communicated with him. I reached out to him as a consultant because I know how important it is to township to get the professional feedback and opinion of consultants in all the processes
of their community projects. Sean Kelly communicated that it was very evident through the 3 public sessions that he participated in. Sorry, I'll just read the quote so I don't misquote him. It was very evident through the 3 public sessions which I participated in, everyone, including the township staff, understood, sought the location now being identified as option 1. In fact, this was the only location discussed for the skate park siting as the rear park option 2 location was deemed undesirable very early in the early days of planning/community input, primarily due to safety, visibility, and isolation concerns. Sean Kelly also wrote a letter which was sent to Pat as well as to all the council members, I believe yesterday. And there was another very poignant quote I want to share in that letter, from that letter as well. As demonstrated through previous site drawings, renderings, and site walks with township staff, the skate park's preferred location would be towards the front and west of the existing community center. At no times was I or my staff led to believe this area would not be suitable from the perspective of the township. In fact, on the contrary, it was mentioned to me that Ball Diamond and associated lands in behind would not be suitable, mostly in response to safety and security concerns. I will also add that the siting is premised on 20 years of experience where visibility, pride, promotion, safety, and community integration have always resulted in the best skate parks. So that is the opinion and recommendation of the original consultant who decided on the Elora Community Center grounds as the preferred site. There's also the issues of visibility. Now, you can see here my picture is from the opposite view, not from standing within where the skate park would be, but from the street view of potentially patrolling officers or residents. In recognition, I'm going to quote Pat's report here for a moment. In recognition of concerns for safety and visibility at option 2, the township plans to remove all the ash and poplar trees along Wellington Road 7. A proposed video surveillance camera and motion sensor light will be installed for the skate park. It is important to note that concerns for safety at option 2 require additional cost and equipment installation, including cameras, motion sensors, a paved path for emergency vehicles that was mentioned, and also the potential for nets of the Ball Diamond, as a few parents have expressed concerns about balls flying over the fence and the danger to the users of the skate park. So I ask, where will the funds for these additions come from? Will it be the skate park? Will it be the township? As well, if the ECC does expand, the edge of option 2 will border on the back of the building. I'm not sure if any of you recall, but about 15 years ago there was a skate park at the back of the ECC buildings, and unfortunately it was an epic failure due to lack of visibility and delinquent behavior that did happen behind the building. From the conclusion of the survey conducted in 37 states, the Tony Hawk Foundation conducted a survey in 2009 in which 103 police officers were interviewed regarding incidents and success at local skate parks. And this is a quote from that study. Some attributed their park's success to highly visible location. Several agree placing their skate parks next to other recreational activities has kept the park more visible and accessible. So at option 1, that is feasible, next to the playground, the pavilion, the Ball Diamond, and the basketball courts. Considering noise concerns. As Director Newson stated, skate park does make excessive noise from the wheels of boards landing on concrete, and neighbors' concerns about the noise is legitimate and significant. I believe every concern from the public should be valued as significant, of course, but I also believe that it's misleading to claim that noise concerns are legitimate. Research shows noise complaints go unrealized after skate parks are installed. Now I understand at the Fergus skate park, there are noise complaints. It's a different style of skate park. They have above ground ramps, which do act as drums. A concrete skate park, as I'm sure Bill Gurney will testify, are very different as far as noise goes. According to a sound study prepared for Parks and Rec, the Department of Brattleboro, Vermont in 2011, which studied a very similar park to the one at ours if it were located at option 1, quotes this: results of the sound testing indicate that at none of the 4 residential property boundaries were skateboard-related sounds detectable at levels above that of ambient or baseline levels. This study included a park which was slightly larger than our proposed park, and one which was equally close to the street on which residents lived across. However, in this study, there was no natural berm or embankment, such as would be at option 1, which will even further reduce the ability of sound to travel up to the road. A final quote I will share is from the Public Skate Park Development Guide, which is an incredibly useful guide for any community exploring the option of a skate park, and it's from 2019. As stated in the Skate Park Development Guide, published by the Tony Hawk Foundation and the International Association of Skateboard Companies, no concern is more vocally expressed during public meetings about skate park locations than noise. In almost every case, once the skate park is open, these fears go unrealized and those impassioned concerns evaporate. Considering the OPP personnel feedback, 3 OPP officers have shared their opinions, and they are not conclusive. They are valuable, of course, in the experience of Constable Shantz, Officer Baroka, and Constable Cunningham are extremely valuable, and some suggestions for factors to consider should be addressed. However, because their opinions vary so greatly, we can't put too much weight on the recommendation for final site. In January of 2014, at a site meeting with Stacy Barron, Constable Christina Baracco occurred. Constable Baracco recommended the front section of the ECC grounds, citing visibility and accessibility as important factors in deciding where the skate park should be located. When we first spoke with Constable Joshua Cunningham on April 8th, he considered option 1 more desirable over option 2, and cited visibility, safety concerns, the difficulty of accessibility for emergency vehicles, the access to the forest trails, and the danger of users traveling through the ECC parking lot on skateboards and scooters as deterrents. The change in Constable Cunningham's opinion and the more recent recommendations of Constable Shantz seem to be influenced by the township's promise of video surveillance, removal of trees along Highway 7, and installing the wide paved path for emergency access. So again, the added cost, it seems to suggest that the township understands this location is not as safe and would need additional requirements to provide a safe environment for the users. Considering public feedback. It's clear public feedback was part of the decision for the preferred skate park design, and the Skate Park Association is grateful for this, thanks to Community Services team and Bill Gurney for the opportunities to share in that process. However, at some time between the February 12th design workshop and the March 20th design workshop, the decision on the placement of the park at the back was made without public input. Many questions were asked at the February 12th meeting regarding the placement, some revolving around safety, and others fears about displacing the ball diamond. The public was assured the decision had not been made and that 3 options were available. It was made clear by township staff present at the meeting that they would follow a process for site selection, a decision at a future time. They have not, as of yet, included public preference in that process. So it's my understanding that they have done their due diligence to recommend these 3 sites. Because of the preferred design that the public has chosen, option 3 was eliminated. But as far as the suitability of both sites, and as far as their due diligence through consultation and geological design, both options are feasible. It should be up to the public at this point to have some input in that decision. As well, if you think about the layout for the skate park, I understand complementary design and future use of the ECC is important to consider. If we break up the field and have the option 2, if we want to put something in the middle at that point, it'll be a direct barrier for visual sightlines. If we put a tennis court or anything else that's in the middle there in that space, which would be an excellent use of space, it would be blocked. If it's up by option 1, there's still all the rest of the field which will be available for future development, for a soccer pitch, or like I said, potentially a tennis court. So that space can still be utilized very wisely. Considering multiple users of the skate park. Younger users aged 10 to 14 would be less likely allowed to use the skate park independently if it were placed at the back, option 2, due to lack of visibility and increased chance of negative peer influence. Families with younger children may be less likely to use the site at option 2 because of the divide from current playground, the potential for territorial feel, and separated spaces. I know Constable Shantz mentioned the idea that maybe the pavilion would be used by youth. Isn't that what it's there for? It's there for people to gather. It's there to bring the communities together. If youth are there in that pavilion, that should be something that's celebrated because they're in a safe space. They are in a space that's publicly available for them to use.
Okay, can you just wrap up? It's a couple minutes have passed.
Okay, sure, certainly. I will just skip to my last slide here. Regarding public preference. So when I approached the community services team with our concerns as a skate park delegation, it was difficult to have a discussion, a dialogue, a healthy dialogue. And I felt very much that instead of embracing our concerns, I was told by 2 of the team members, I was questioned, why are you focusing on the negative? And I was challenged with the remark, do you want this to be your legacy for the project, to be challenging this final stage? And it really, it inspired me in a way, because I thought, of course, I want to focus on this, and not as a negative, but as a challenge, because if we hadn't have focused on the challenge through this whole process, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this discussion today, because there's been many challenges, many things that have come up against the skate park. So I designed a survey, put it to the public online through social media. We had 130 responses as of yesterday. 88.5%, as you can see, preferred option 1. For a variety of reasons, there's a list of comments, and I do believe you've all been forwarded the results of that survey. I have some printouts as well. If you did not get it, I'd be happy to give them to you. Some of the comments include, may I have just 2 more minutes?
No.
No.
I've
Okay.
given you 5 extra almost.
Okay,
So-
I'll end there then. You can read
Okay.
the comments for yourself, but they're very telling, and I strongly encourage you, if you, to consider reading those comments, because they are poignant and they're the voice of the public. They're the voice of the people who elected you. They're the voice of the people who will be using this space. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, we have a second delegation. Paul, a resident in the area. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for seeing me today. And I know there's been some excellent presentations today, and I think that was a great presentation that you gave, but I do have concerns. As a resident, I live right across the road, and a number of my neighbors all have the same concerns. What was mentioned already was the Deer Park in Guelph. You saw that they had to move the park because of noise. In 2015, Mount Pleasant Skate Park in BC, whole neighborhood rally because of noise. Kitchener study in 2012, they did a study on the sound of skate parks and such. The result was such that they have decided that neighborhood parks will be removed from the list of potential sites due to noise. In July of 2018, the Township of North Dumfries approved their skate park, and they put it at the rear of their community center. So these are just a few of the things that I was able to find just recently. And so I thought it is a concern of the neighbors that we will be dealing with. And there's no doubt. I mean, I saw the design, and there are steps going down on concrete. And you can't tell me that skateboards going down steps are not going to make a lot of noise. That's definitely going to be a factor. The Community Advisory Committee did recommend the location, as was mentioned. What has not been mentioned yet is the use of the property that is there now. That's a wonderful grass area with a basketball court. Last night there were 20 kids out on the basketball court. 20. And it was pretty much dark at that time. What's also used is the grass area quite often. Just a week ago was the antique show and sale, and that area, the grass area, was used for overflow parking because there's just so many people there. And you know, whenever there's major events at the arena right now, that area gets well used. The also area, many teams use that area for warm-ups. You mentioned ball tournaments that are being used there. The ball teams that are coming and getting readiness for their games are using that area for warm-ups all the time. I see lacrosse teams using the area. So it's well used. It's not like that area is just open space not being used. It is a well-used area, and I see it because my front window looks right at it. And I encourage a skate park to be there. I really do. I think it's a wonderful addition. Having been in the community most of my life, I know. Also has been mentioned that you mentioned that young children might not be allowed to use it because of the peer influence of older children. Well, what's that saying about the older children? I think that says something. If younger children can't use it because there's older children there and you have to have it supervised, what's that saying about the older children? I worry about that, being that close to me then. And also, being that close to the pavilion, I do see many people using it as a picnic area, many people using with the young children in the playground area, and the mentioned by the OPP officer about language. Having been a high school teacher and elementary school teacher of children that will be using it, I know what the language will be like. And that will no doubt be an influence. Friday nights, every Friday night, I think it's Friday nights or Saturday nights, can't remember. The Mennonite community uses both ball diamonds. I'm sure they won't be appreciative of the language that might be coming from the skate park being right that close to them. So those are my comments. I hope council does take into consideration the neighbors that will be directly affected most. If there is a survey, and you mentioned social media, I wasn't aware of that survey. I certainly probably would have. But a lot of the people that are living across the road are retired and may not be on social media. So who was informed of that survey that so I don't know how relevant that survey really is at this point, not having been aware of it myself at this point. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thanks to both delegations. Great job. And now we have had a presentation from Pat. We've talked to had a couple different presentations and then delegations. Now turn things over from questions for council. Who wants to start off our discussion here? Councilor McCrae, seeing it's your award.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Question for Officer Shantz. We've heard how parents are interested in having Site 1 so that they can drive along David Street to observe behavior. Given the fact that we have sort of 3 intersections between the bridge and County Road 7, is there not risk of driver distraction?
Absolutely. If people were, if you were utilizing David Street to visually monitor what your kids are doing, potentially that could cause some distractions for pedestrians or other people accessing that roadway. And I think just the increase in foot traffic, as well as vehicle traffic in the summertime, if it gets a little bit busier, weekends, etc., we can have increased volume of traffic on that Wellington Road 7. That alone can be a distraction for people driving. So I don't think you can solely rely on the ability to use it as the ability to drive and see what your kids are doing. Is that what your question is?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor McWayne?
Thanks, Shelley. Somebody mentioned, and my thinking is that there is a natural berm there for Site 1, and the berms are used to disguise noise for all kinds of other industries. I personally don't think that any noise from the skate park is going to be very noticeable at all on the other side of the road because of the berm. So I don't see that as a reason to move the park away from that area, and I'm particularly concerned about the proximity to the walking trail through the trees there, as you know, for the younger children. And as was mentioned, I don't expect that parents are going to be, of younger children, are going to be really very keen on dropping their kids off at the back of the park, as somebody said, with a bunch of teenagers where there's no easy oversight. So the whole safety thing at the back versus the front is still a concern to me, I must say.
Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Thank you. One question, Pat, is there any possibilities of noise mitigation aspects that we can put around a skateboard park? Because obviously it's outside and it's low, but I'm wondering if you've investigated some of those things. A second question I have, or difficulty I have, is a lot of the information, this is what makes this discussion difficult, is it's non-quantifiable. It's a possibly, we possibly have a future expansion where we draw some dotted lines, a possible noise, possible loitering. So it makes it a little more difficult for us to make decisions on that, because now it's more of a preference aspect. So I really have to say I respect and appreciate the fact that you put pros and cons on both sides, because it's very important, and we have to take that seriously from everyone. But there are things that somewhat gets down to a preference aspect in the end.
Pat, on the noise mitigation question?
So I really had wished Matthew Allan were here because he would be able to provide a bit more detail. But I think any noise mitigation, trees or fencing or some sort of sound barrier, is then also going to be a visual barrier to the park. So it doesn't really assist with creating a sound barrier between the park and the residents unless you create a visual barrier. I'm just going to share my personal experience. I'm not... We travel to a few of the skate parks in our process to decide what to do here in Center Wellington. And we went to the Acton Skate Park, quite a facility, very large. And so their situation is they have it behind the arena. So there's a solid wall arena, a parking lot, and then their very large skate park. And when you're at the skate park, it is very noisy. Not only the kids talking and stuff, but the clickety-clack and the hum of the wheels. It's very noisy. And so as we walked away from the park towards where we were parked, the noise got less and less until I got right up against that wall. Within 20 feet of that wall, it was like I was standing right next to the skate park. The noise came right off that wall, and it was like I was standing there. And our fear is that is what it's going to feel like at the garage doors of those homes. I can't guarantee that until it's built, but that is that same, we're creating that same line. And I guess that's why I say it's significant, and it's something to consider for those residents. So that's my answer on noise. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to comment. Bill or or one of my staff, Matt or Dorothy, has anything to add? Okay. If Matt were here, he'd tell you more. Then I also mentioned it's non-quantifiable. There is a lot of, in any landscape architecture work, it's a lot of best practice. It's not black and white. We don't hire engineers to say, you know, well, we do when we're building the park, but it's not as black and white. So as staff, we took into consideration many factors, as you can see, and are recommending option 2. In our opinion, is not unsafe. It is a safe location. It can be seen by 3 sides. It is in proximity to the rest of the park. It's just not right inside the rest of the park, but it is still close. So in our opinion, it is safe. It is enough distance away to allow the youth to have their own space without being right on top of all of the other children and adults of the park use. So non-quantifiable is a good observation, but relying on our team of experts, we still selected option 2. The easy decision for us would have been to say, build it in option 1. That's where the Skate Park Association wants it. But we're saying, let's make the right decision, a well thought out decision, and through that process have selected option 2.
So I just want to, the discussion now that we're having right now is for council and staff, so I won't be taking any other questions or comments from the group right now. Councillor Kittrus?
Thank you, Kelly. I have a few questions for Pat. In option 2, how many trees are you cutting down? Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask them as is that okay?
Can you put up the photo looking at the car from inside the park in my presentation? The trees that are being taken down are not the large there's 3 large trees that are not being taken down. And if anyone, Matt, I may need you to come up. There are which trees? Those are maples? The 3 maple trees? The 3 large maples are not being taken down. It's difficult to see from the sun shining in, but right along that fence there are a number of, I would say, 8-foot trees that are all going to come out. They're either dead, ash trees that are going to die, or they're poplar trees, so they're not really a healthy tree that we want to promote growing. I haven't counted them. Matthew has, but I haven't.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. I just have another question. Is the basketball court being eliminated?
No.
Okay. I was wondering also why, I was wondering if there's any form of shelter for the number 2. That's one of my concerns is when it rains or it's really hot and sunny, where do they go in option 2? Like, they got to go all the way to the pavilion anyway. And also, I would like to recommend that there be a water fountain there because I think that activity is pretty strenuous. And so I'm concerned that there isn't a place for them to go when there's all of a sudden inclement weather. And then they might just go right to the trees or climb the fence to get out of the way. And the fence is only 5. So I'm just wondering what plan you have for that for option 2.
So after this is decided, the location and the design, Matthew Allan is going to do what we call, so our consultant is only responsible for the park. We will then put a landscape plan design together with pathways and potentially a shelter with a bench under it and other amenities that will join all of this park together and make it fully animated, from the playground to the skate park to the parking lots. We won't be able to afford to do that all at once, but we will look to fundraising and donations and add to the park as we grow. So I know I didn't answer your question, but there would be a potential to put a small shelter and a bench near the skate park to ensure that there is a shelter and shade. If you look at the design, there is a picture of a tree there shading a bench. The tree might not be huge at first, but in a couple of years it would shade that bench and give them a place to sit in the shade. And the water fountain, that has been a popular request, and we have to look into that.
Andy, just one side to that.
Just our experience at the Fergus, when it does rain, and we have shelters nearby that, and most of the kids are coming into the arena because they want to stay out of the thunder and lightning or whatever it may be. And quite honestly, if it's just rain, they're skateboarding through it anyway. I mean, most of them aren't looking for cover. They're having a good time. Gets a little slippery or even more challenging for some of the jumps and things of that nature. So it's only when it's a pretty downpour. I know at the skateboard park in Fergus, we've had to actually during the winter time, especially when we get a light, heavy snowfall and then it melts, keeping the kids off it when there's even just ice on the ramps and things of that nature. So they're out there as much as they possibly can.
Councillor McCray?
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you to Paul. As a resident on David Street, comments have been...
Sorry, Councillor McCray. The questions have to be either to staff or across. We can't bring the people in anymore. Yeah, sorry. Maybe Pat knows the answer, though.
Okay, let's see, or maybe this one might be for Officer Shantz as well. Basically, comments have been made about residents along David Street being able to see into Site 1 as opposed to Site 2. Given the fact that you may have people driving up to the skate park and parking their cars on David Street, would those cars not block their sight lines to Site 1, whereas they would be able to, from their windows, look over the cars and actually see Site 2 better than Site 1?
Sure.
Throw it for now, so we can explain.
I just want to ensure I understand your question.
Okay, so if we, yeah, it's unfortunate we don't have a picture, but if you assume...
So we're talking of the residents on David
Yes.
Street?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Parking along David Street.
yeah, so you have parking along David Street. So a car is typically, what, 4.5 feet high? It's sort of a solid barrier. So if you have people living in the residences on David Street, and we're expecting them to be able to see into Site 1, when you have cars parked there, you actually will not be able to see into Site 1. Whereas you
Potentially.
have a better view of Site 2.
But yeah, I would say potentially, yeah.
Well, I think the thing we have to consider is this skate park is for all ages. Yeah. So, thank you.
Councillor Kittress?
Wanted to ask, I guess I wanted to ask the consultant about when you have the skate park, how does it work for like age groups and stuff like that traditionally in the skate parks? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, these skateboard parks are really interesting environments, you know, having traveled around and done so many. At first glance, it looks really kind of pretty straightforward. You're building a skateboard park with skateboard features for skateboarders. You delve a little deeper and you start to understand all these wheeled sport activities that are taking place. In addition to skateboarding, there's BMX riders, two-wheeled scooter riding is hugely popular right now over running these parks. So at first glance, you think you can just like really quantify that user group and characterize that user group, but you start to spread it out for BMX riders, scooter riders, inline skating, not quite as popular anymore, skateboarding, still very popular. So you look at all those wheeled sport activities, and then you start to look at different age groups, and yet you understand that you have people, you know, participating 4 and 5 years old, 30, 40 years old, like huge broad range of age groups. And then you start looking at skill levels. You have people that have been doing it for years and years and years, and they feel really confident. They move fast. They hit the big stuff, you know, versus that type of user who's just a beginner level rider. It's their first or second season. They don't move as fast. They're not as confident. Now, the difficult part of the answer is the equation is, it's like trying to pack people into a small room. The bigger area of paved surface you have, the more ability there is to accommodate a larger group of people. So more so than it's, you know, directly proportional to the terrain or the design of the terrain, the configuration, bigger parks with larger areas of concrete will accommodate a larger group of people at any given time. You know, same way a room or a concert hall or a sports stadium will accommodate a bit, you know, just the bigger the footprint, the easier it is to accommodate a group. So it will be popular. It will be well used. It will be crowded. Now, the interesting thing about these spaces, they are unsupervised. And if anyone spent any amount of time at a skateboard park, you see that there's this really amazing social dynamic that happens where people just, you know, they recognize that it's a shared public space and everybody gets a chance and everybody gets a turn. And there's a lot of mentorship happens that, you know, between the age groups and such like that. Did that answer your question properly?
It sort of did. I just have another question if I can. I'm just wondering about the engagement with people that are not skateboarders. Like, is it like adverse? Like, considering the presentation done by the Skateboard Association, well, the Elora, just about, I'm sort of a little bit, there's this sort of stigma about youth, but I know that they might have tattoos or whatever, the whole gamut, and it might not be, but generally, they sort of just want to fit in. Like, so I just sort of wondering about, there's this concern about them not, like, being adverse or something like that, and I don't know if that's accurate. I just wanted to ask your experience.
That's a bit of a difficult question to answer, and I'm still standing at the podium. But you know, there's a lot of difference between, you know, 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. Now, I don't have children. Between teenagers and 20s and in their 30s. So we've seen a lot of park developments where there is compatible uses. You know, skateboard parks adjacent to playgrounds. You know, so I think there is a level of compatibility there. My same argument before about square footage, you know, in the north area of the site, you've got the playground, the basketball court, the shade structure, and trying to fit in a skateboard park. So I can see the sort of the tightness and the congestion. Now, whether those two are, you know, work side by side, I would say, yes, they can. There would be a great opportunity for a parent with a young person at the playground and an older person at the skateboard park. I can see that. At the same time, you know, at the skateboard park, you know, you're going to see a level of language. There's going to be, you know, a certain level of behavior, a teenager behavior that maybe kids don't want to be exposed to. Honestly, I could see arguments on both sides of that. So I can't offer anything definitive there.
Councillor Foster?
I was just wondering if our OPP officer might want to comment on the youth behavior question, if that's appropriate.
She could. I mean, I thought that she gave a pretty good presentation of that already. I think that was in her presentation, so I don't think there's anything net new. Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Your Worship. The discourse, as I'm hearing it, we have in the past considered Bissell Park and 3 locations here at the ECC. As this is unfolding, we've narrowed that down to option 1 and option 2. What I'm hearing from 2 very articulate and well-spoken citizens here, Paul Decking, a former teacher of mine, raising valid concerns about option 1. I'm also hearing very valid concerns raised about option 2 by Elora, a constituent in Ward 3. I therefore have to conclude that we need to take another look here and drive for a new option, as neither of these appear to be appropriate.
Councillor Dunsmore?
My first question is for Bill. Bill, these parks have a tendency to grow, correct? Once you get started, you get add-on features like pump tracks that were mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
Option 1, can you put a pump track up there with the existing equipment that are there already?
I'd say looking at the north area of the site, sort of north of that first base fence line, there's already a number of uses going on: basketball, shade structure, playground. I think you add a skateboard park, and I think you've really
maxed out
the capacity of that north area of the site.
So if we're looking at a pump track and a BMX park and something that helps another section of the community with their recreation, then option 2 would probably afford us that opportunity to grow?
I would agree with that. And then the big missing piece of the puzzle here is the baseball diamond. If and when the baseball diamond is taken
Right.
out of commission, there's obviously quite a bit more space made available. But even in the short term, I would argue that there's more expansion opportunity or opportunity to develop a pump trap better afforded in the site location to the south.
Okay, thank you. I have another question if I
Yeah,
could.
Councillor Dunsmore?
Officer Shantz. So I've read 3 different reports from different police officers. Have you guys sat down and consolidated your thoughts at all? Particularly around the safety concerns, because I have said all along on Site 2, I have some severe safety concerns, and I think they're being addressed, but I want to get a police officer's opinion on that. And I'm particularly worried about drugs. So if you could address those, I'd be appreciative.
Absolutely. And listening to Laura's report and hearing Constable Baracco, Constable Cunningham, and myself, I had no prior involvement or conversation with either of those officers prior to my first meeting with Pat and doing the walkabout as we did. After I had completed my observations, I submitted to Pat, and Constable Cunningham wasn't available at that time, and there was an urgency to have that completed for a report. He and I have since had conversation, and he did email. He was in contact with Pat and clarified as we consulted and talked about some of my observations, and more so we spoke about the traffic piece on David Street with the increased foot traffic, loitering, like kids congregating together to watch, especially if you have very skilled people that are using the skate park, doing really cool tricks and all that fun stuff that happens. Kids will congregate and watch that sort of thing, and from that elevation, you can see there could be some increased traffic on David Street for sure from there. I have not talked with Constable Baracco. I was unaware that she had been at that meeting, so I have not talked with her about anything, but Constable Cunningham and myself, we have talked about things.
Okay.
And if Pat if you wanted to share his email with you, with council, that may clarify some of the questions.
Okay. Can I ask one more question, and then I'll get out of the way for everybody else? And this is for Pat, and I know you're on your computer trying to find a piece of information. We do have a request from one of the groups that came here to defer this motion until we have further discussion or input from the public. Can you tell me, to the construction schedule and the timing of getting this built in 2019, what a deferral would do to the project?
In order for us to stay on construction schedule with groundbreaking in June and opening in September, we would not be able to meet that schedule. And in fact, we would probably have to be moving the park to 2020 if we defer this any further. It's a very tight construction schedule, and we're on scale for the second build of new lines in 2019, and that takes us until the end of September. So to get in later would be challenging at this point.
Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Hey, you have one comment and one question. And I'll start with my comment first. Google Maps is amazing because we can move around this site very well. At first I wasn't really with you on option 2, but the more I look at this, I'm starting to see that if we produce a trail network around this and we bring it forward, we can really make this a full field functioning park. Right now I feel like looking at it almost feels like a dead space in the back area there. If we can bring trails, I think the key is to connect this park. And that feels like what's missing in this whole drawing right now as we look, is how it can pull it together. So I can see how option 2, if we bring this together, can work. The fence and fly balls and stuff like that, have we considered the safety requirements on that aspect? I will admit I'm not a baseball player and I don't think I could hit that far, but I would like to know if we've talked about that. Neil can?
Neil
Shoot
admitted
away.
at CSAC publicly that he can hit it over that fence, but I'm going to actually ask Bill to comment on that.
Okay, because I know you can also get fly or stray
Right,
balls too.
and we do have contingency in this budget, and should we need additional higher fencing or netting, we could put that in through the contingency budget, but at this point we haven't. If you want, I know you talked to Matt a little bit about that.
Yeah, interestingly, this is, we've encountered this scenario a number of times before. One of our builds that was late last season was down in Leamington, the community of down in Leamington. And we found ourselves in this situation before, skateboard parks located off the outfield fence of a baseball diamond. As a rule of thumb, we've been trying to stay, at least 30 feet away from the baseball fence, which is kind of what we've drawn and achieved right here. So, when we've encountered this situation before, in terms of setting back, this is pretty much on par with our standard practice. There's been a couple of exceptions where we have put the park closer to the fence just through other constraints. But in other circumstances where we've encountered this, is pretty consistent with being off the fence roughly about 30 feet or so.
Councillor Foster?
Your Worship, we've heard valid concerns about option 1. We've heard valid concerns about option 2. We've heard a request to further engage the public. With all of the above, I'd like to make a motion that we defer this matter, send it back to CZAC for greater clarity from the public and to consider additional options in Elora or in the community. I know with the McDonald funding, Elora is part of that. There's a motion.
We just have to be clear on the deferral, what you're asking for.
He said defer back to CSAC.
For what direction are we gonna give CSAC?
We're going to consider additional site options, and we're going to consider, to a greater degree, public input on the matter in terms of option 1 and then option 2, as well as consider additional site options.
Okay, deferrals don't have any discussion, so we need to have a seconder for a deferral option. Seconder for the deferral option? Okay, so that doesn't move ahead. Any other discussion on this option? I mean, I haven't said anything. Councillor McLean?
Thanks, Kelly. Pat, you talked about cameras. As I mentioned earlier, my main concern with the safety of option 2 is the proximity to the woods and the trail. And there are nasty people that hang around the woods and trails sometimes, and younger kids are back there by themselves it's just a little too easy. So what kind of camera coverage do you foresee that would help that? It just, to me, it's a huge red flag, that's all.
Well, we'll be relying on our IT department to provide information on specific camera locations. Our vision is to have the park completely encompassed with video surveillance. And just for clarity, regardless of where this park goes, it will have video surveillance. So we're putting it in Fergus and we're putting it wherever this park goes. It is not part of the park budget. It is part of our surveillance camera budget, which is coming as a recommendation later to council with a whole policy on video surveillance, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about that. But the idea would be not only for personal safety of the users, but also for property safety or security. We want to have video surveillance, because the other thing that can happen in a dark concrete park is tagging or graffiti or other types of behavior. So it would be a video camera that would be able to have clear photos at night as well as during the daytime. And the light is simply to indicate to somebody that it's after hours and somebody's there that shouldn't be there, that it's a motion sensor. So our hope is that the video surveillance will be live streamed to our customer service desk in Fergus. And although that seems kind of crazy that we're watching it in Fergus, they're close to a phone, 911. They can also call the staff right away at the Elora Community Center, and they can get out there and react to whatever is going on and whatever they're seeing out there when the park is open and the customer service desk is open. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Just so people don't make it unclear, the Fergus Skateboard Park did have a camera on it, and it hasn't been in operation. That's why we've got the video camera upgrades. So that has had video camera surveillance since we started.
Councillor McCrae?
Thank you, Mayor Linton. I have two questions, one for Bill and one for Pat. So, Bill, I've read various documents that talk about the average time people spend at a skateboard park, and it seems to be on average about 3 hours per visit. Is that your sort of understanding?
That number doesn't surprise me. You will find some of the most avid participants are going to be there when the weather permits and the daylight permits, probably a heck of a lot longer than that. You know, these facilities are in demand. They're really high used. I don't know how much the individual participants will use, but like generally speaking, when the weather permits and daylight hours are there, these are popular, busy parks. And some individuals, I wouldn't be surprised to hear, stay there twice that long, 6-hour stretches, all through the day in the summertime.
Okay, thank you. Pat? Darn. I'll have to think about it. I forgot what the question was.
Councillor Kitchett?
Thank you. I don't know whether this is for Pat or Bill. I was just wondering, maybe Bill, in your experience, is there any skate parks that you've made with like heating, like in the, so that you can use it longer? Because Andy said there's ice and stuff like that, and obviously, you know, if they love skateboarding, they're going to be there as long as possible. And I was just wondering is that part of any design process that you have?
Experience creating a concrete skate park that's heated and melts the snow. No, I could imagine the construction process. I would imagine it would add some costs, maybe significant costs to the project, but I haven't had any direct experience with creating a park that offers that, no.
Pat?
I was just going to respond to the email from Josh Cunningham. Did you want me to read that? It's quick. So Officer Cunningham replied after speaking with Officer Shantz. After speaking with Jen, a couple concerns about safety were clarified. It was clear that you would be addressing the issue of foot traffic access from David Street, east of the curling club, competing with one-axe pursuit through means of a trail. I also understand a drivable trail would allow access to the entire area for emergency vehicles. I also understand the live feed surveillance and motion activity lights would assist in the safety and security.
Councillor McCray?
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. I just remember my question. Pat, what are the hours of operation for the skate park?
Typically, we would have a sign that would permit park use from dawn to dusk, usually half an hour after dawn until half an hour before dark. So that would be the sign. I can't put a time to that because it changes as the summer goes along. But by putting that up there, then the sign would also say use of it after those hours would be considered trespass, so that the police would have the authority to ask those people to leave the park in dark. Okay.
Councillor Dawes?
Just a comment, no more questions, is I think the difference between option 1 and 2 is that option 1 would be a great place for the skateboard park right now, but we've got a lot of stuff going on there, so there would be no expansion. This is kind of like where they put the Fergus Community Center 20 years ago, and everybody said, what are you doing putting it out there? And now the community's grown around it. I think if the building grows, we can put a pump track in the back. I think in 5 or 10 years, people are going to look at this and say, boy, were they smart to put it there. And I would hate to be another Acton that would have to dig up a skate park and move it somewhere else, because we just don't have the money for that. So I'm in favor of option 2.
Councillor McCray?
Mayor Linton, are we allowed to make just general comments at this point, or once we go into the vote?
We haven't gone to the vote. Oh, did you move it?
If you need me to, I will.
Well, if you want to say something. Councillor McCray?
Forget if he waits too long.
I've actually got it written down. I guess just as an individual who walks the trail along the Gorge Park on I'd say a daily basis, at no time have I ever had any concerns about my own personal safety. I find that there's frequent use of that trail, dog walkers, tourists, During the summer months when One Axe Pursuits is operating, they're there every day from dawn to dusk. So in terms of that being an isolated area, I don't see that. There's also been comments about drug users hiding out and other ne'er-do-wells, but again, I have never seen any drug paraphernalia in that area. I've never seen, except on 1 or 2 occasions, beer cans, but that's usually been as a result of a game that's taken place at the arena. But overall, it is a fairly safe place back there. And the fencing, it's all new fence that goes all the way from the David Street Bridge to the tubing launch area in the Gorge Park, and that is quite safe what has been put in there. So again, I just want to clarify that unless you've really walked that area, it's a lot safer than you may think.
Any other last comments on this one? Okay, I'm going to read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington approve option 2 on the location map as the preferred site for the Elora Skate Park on the Elora Community Center grounds, and that Council approves the design direction 1 as approved concept design for the new Elora Skate Park as presented at the April 23rd, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting. Move for that recommendation, Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McCray. All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay, we're moving on to tennis. From skating to tennis. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the presentations. I guess you guys are going to hurry up. We're going to have to take a 2-minute break, 3-minute break, and then we'll come back and talk tennis.
I didn't
majority of people are, they're talking about baseball or football, right?
Okay, we'll call this meeting back to order. We're on section 10.2, Fergus Tennis Club Agreement, and we'll have us get a start by with our Managing Director of Community Services. We've seen already today so much. Pat.
And love and adore, right? Oh. All right, so if you remember back on March 18th, we had the grounds use agreement up for council discussion, and it was deferred. Staff requested that we defer that. So I'm back here again. Our deferral was to speak to CSAC, and we've done that. And we've made some changes to the agreement and to our operations. So I just want to kind of give council some background on all of that, and then I know there's a couple delegations. In your package, it was a lot of information, but it was the staff report sent us for CSAC. It was the staff report from the March 18th council meeting, the use of grounds agreement that was presented on March 18th. Then we revised the grounds agreement based on feedback and speaking to the users, and presented that at the CSAC on April 10th. I also have presented to, or in this package, a 2019 proposed court schedule for Tower Street courts and the Sportsplex. And I have the delegation information that was presented at the March 18th council included as well. In 2000, oh, that's me, I have to push that button. Waiting for Carrie to do it. Okay, not this time. We've had a tennis grounds use agreement from 2008 to 2018, and then it expired in December, and it's an agreement for the Tower Street courts and the Sportsplex tennis courts. The Fergus Tennis Club is a volunteer organization since 1920, and we have a mutually beneficial arrangement with this agreement. The Fergus Tennis Club promotes the sport and the use of the courts in the community, and the Fergus Tennis Club have been a responsible and good custodian of the courts. The agreement permits the Fergus Tennis Club exclusive use of the Tower Street courts and use of the Sportsplex courts at designated times. The pay-as-you-play hours, just for clarity, at the Sportsplex courts are restricted to when the public can use the Sportsplex courts, and the delegation that came forward at the March Council Committee of the Whole meeting on March 18th, the item was deferred, and CSAC has made a recommendation. I'm trying to read that, sorry, it's really small. So council asked us to defer it and to come back with their information. I don't need to read the whole motion there. The Sportsplex courts pay-as-you-play hours are determined by the customer service counters at the Sportsplex. The agreement permits usage outside of these hours by the tennis club members. Schedule C of the agreement outlines the permitted times of usage of the shared responsibility by each party. So after discussions and hearing from the delegation and talking to the tennis club, we've revised Schedule C to include an opportunity that the Schedule C be reviewed every 3 years. And so in the package, there was just a yellow paragraph highlighted in the new agreement that shows that's the only change between the one you saw on the 18th and the one you have here today. I should get Carrie pushing this button. Okay, so the other thing that we wanted to do was also in response to their concern about there not being any open court time, was to take a look at what is typically the use of the courts during each month of the summer. So white indicates any time that the members can use the courts. In the top, you'll see there's 3 courts at the Tower Street courts and 2 courts at the Sportsplex courts, and every day of the week is listed there. The gray area shows when pay-as-you-play opportunities are available at the Sportsplex tennis courts. So one thing that was brought to our attention through this process is that during the pay-as-you-play hours, not everybody is signing in. And so we took a look at that, and we're going to tell you a little bit about how we're going to try to repair that and do it better in the future. If you look at the gray area on Tuesdays in June, we have agreed with the tennis club to permit them use between 3:30 and 5 for 5 weeks, 1 day a week, to offer an after-school program. So kids can come from the schools near the sportsplex and come over, and they're off the courts by 5:30, which is really when prime time begins. And we really think this is a special event, not just a weekend or whatever. This is considered a special event, something that could happen 5 consecutive weeks. And this program promotes new, younger beginner instruction at a reduced cost. So we think this is a great opportunity for some youngsters to be introduced to the sport of tennis. If you look at July, one thing I want to point out here is you'll see the light blue section at the Tower Street courts. Just so you realize it's either they, during their camp, this is their summer camp in July, on any given day, they're either using the courts in the morning or in the afternoon, and then they flip, and then the kids are at the rugby club, I guess, for the other half of the day. So it's not every morning and every afternoon, but it's shown up here that way. At some point in July and August, the township day camps will be using the courts 1 day a week for approximately 2 to 3 hours. It is not on this schedule, but it will be signed at the courts, but we just don't have that identified yet. We don't have our day camp schedule set yet. And then we have August, which looks very much like July. And then September. So the concern was that blue section on Wednesdays at the Sportsplex courts, we were permitting the tennis club to use the courts 1 additional hour on Wednesday evenings from 7 to 8. Typically, pay-as-you-play hours end at 8 p.m. These on Wednesdays would end at 7 p.m. After conversations with the club, we understood that there was a desire for those hours for the particular beginner users that are using the courts at that time for a house league. And staff were hopeful that these beginner users would become avid tennis players and were willing to give up the hour of pay-as-you-play time. So changes from the agreement from the 2008 to 18 agreement to the one we have presented here to council. Just to remind you, there's going to be a $250 payment for the Sportsplex Hydro from the tennis clubs. There's a long-term maintenance cost split of 75%, 25%, so 75% township and 25% Fergus Tennis Club. We have extended the member hours at the Sportsplex for the tennis club on Wednesdays to include 7 to 8 p.m. And we've added that we will review Schedule C every 3 years. And the idea there is that if it's a minor change, like now our front desk hours are open until 4 o'clock on Saturday, then we would want to extend our pay-as-you-play hours till 4 o'clock on Saturday. So we would be at a director's level, I would be able to go in and sign off on that change. If for anything major, we built new courts. We have major changes we want to look at for this agreement, cost-wise or anything else, it would come back to council for consideration. That was in response to the delegation's concerns that it was a 10-year agreement with no flexibility. So we've added that little piece in. We've also looked at changing our operating at the Sportsplex courts. So we're going to introduce a new wristband that will record the time of start of play and different colors each day that cannot be reused. So members of the tennis club will also be required to sign in. So when we pulled out our stats to say, well, how many people are using these courts? I have to admit, our stats were not great because many members were not coming in to sign in. They were just using their pass and going right onto the courts. So our hope is that by adding a wristband policy, members and non-members must check in at our desk so that we can invite them onto the court. They either pay or it's part of their membership, but we can better track how many people are actually using the courts at what times. As I mentioned in the last presentation, the township is introducing back to council a new video surveillance program. If that is adopted by council and accepted with that new bylaw and policy, we would want to introduce a video surveillance camera at the Sportsplex tennis courts that could be viewed by the front counter. One of the complaints was that we don't know how many people are out there. People are getting on there without paying. This would give us that opportunity to view this. The courts are not in viewing distance of any of our staff. They'd be able to see it. If they saw someone who is not in compliance, then we could enforce in compliance with the cameras and send a staff person out to address the situation. We anticipate improved statistics collections through this pay-as-you-play hours and be able to better report back to council in the future. CSAC did make a recommendation to council. They spent about an hour discussing the tennis courts. They listened to a number of delegations, and some will be here tonight to speak to you. But they came back with a resolution that the Community Services Advisory Committee recommends to Council of Township of Central Wellington that they approve the amended use of grounds agreement between the Fergus Tennis Club and the Township of Central Wellington for the use of the Tower Streets courts and the Sportsplex tennis courts as presented at the Community Services Advisory Committee meeting held April 10th, 2019. So just so you're aware, the agreement that you have in front of you today for asking us for your approval on is the same one that we took to CSAC. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Pat. And again, just like the last item on our agenda, we'll do the delegations and open up for council questions. So the first delegation is Sheila Hogarth, the president of the Fergus Tennis Club. Welcome, Sheila. Thanks for sitting through the whole other item that had nothing to do with tennis.
Interesting. That
Well,
was
good.
you guys had a tough job to do there. So
Thanks.
this is going to be a little bit strange because I'm actually responding before you've heard from the complainant, but that's the way it's going.
They received the information at March 18th meeting.
Okay. Okay. Fergus Tennis Club is run by a volunteer board of directors and has been for 99 years now. 2 years ago, the board got together and we discussed the recent tragedies in our communities with some young people, and we were wondering what we could do to respond as a club. The club's new motto became family, fitness, and friendship. Tennis is not like other community sports where the parents drop off the child to play with other kids, perhaps be judged by their peers. It's a very unique sport in its ability to be able to bring children together to play a physical sport with their parents, perhaps for a whole lifetime. That has been our focus ever since. In early May, we send our pro, Dave Rowett, into the local schools and we run tennis lessons during gym classes. Some schools form tennis clubs that walk onto our club on Tower Street and meet Dave for more lessons and games. J.D. Hogarth actually had 35 students on their tennis team the very first year of running that program. There was no charge to the students. The club paid the pro his hourly wage. The club purchased 3 portable nets that first year, donated them to the school, and then last year rackets and balls, which we also donated. We open up our courts on Tower Street to many schools, from Montessori up to high schools each year at no charge. Last year, we expanded our program out to the community and offered a free Learn to Play program at the Sportsplex in the mornings when we have availability for 3 weekends in May. First year, we had 60 kids sign up and take place. We're taking registrations. We're going to do that again this year, although we've had to cut back the time allowed per age group so as not to interfere with the play as you play at the Sportsplex in response to this complaint. Actually, we have an adult Learn to Play program too, if anybody here is interested. We wanted to try the junior after school program, which Pat mentioned, for 4 weeks in June. These are non-prime time lessons, which will allow more children to attend because they can walk to the Sportsplex. It's a little bit further from most of the local schools to go to Tower Street. These two have been cut back somewhat in response to today's complaint. Oh, you've got July up there. Thank you. So again, this is our busiest time of the year is July, which is why I wanted to show you that one. We have a lot of programs going on for all different levels, whether they be beginners, intermediate, a lot of house leagues. I'd love to talk about them, but I'm not going to have time. So the only thing that I really wanted to point out is that there's always some court time. Even our busiest month, there is some court time, even during those busy 6 to 8 you know, that is the time frame that everybody wants to get around. Except for Wednesday, there is 1 hour that you're not going to be able to find a court unless you're in a program from 7 to 8, and there's potential also for Thursdays. So let's point out, so for example, see on the beginner clinic on Tuesdays, if we don't have enough people sign up for that, it's a month-long program. If we don't fill it, it's taken out of the schedule for the whole month. So this is worst case scenario. This is if everything fills, all programs run on our busiest month, okay? We have always abided by the 4-week clause. Time has been granted for the Wednesday evenings from 7 to 8, as we're asking now, for the last 2 years. And I believe the only other exception was we ran overtime on that free Learn to Play last year for 3 Saturday mornings by a half an hour. We have, however, put up a new board on the Sportsplex courts that we will now have everything listed so the public knows what's going on. Last year was also a big year for additions to our club. In staying with our motto of making our club family friendly and inclusive to all ages, all levels, we built a huge practice wall on that side lot. Yes, you were there. We had asphalt poured and made a pickleball/mini tennis court as well to accommodate both young and old. And it works really great to free up court time as well, particularly when the young kids are on the court. We also put in a basketball net in keeping with the theme. And all of this was done without financial assistance from the township. Savannah quotes active community participation wanes once players realize court access is very limited. Well, it can't be the members that she's discussing because our membership keeps growing. In fact, last year alone, we brought on 100 new members last year. The increase in organized programs within the club has been amazing. And surely it's not the general public she's talking about because we're discussing 1 hour per week of public time that we would like to run our beginner house league. 1 hour. The public will be losing 1 hour of pay-as-you-play time per week. Could I have the other slide, please? This is the other thing that I just wanted to show you. Our membership fees are there. They start at $45. Everything is included. It's all of our programs are free, except for if you take the clinics, then we have to pay our the charges for that. But I'd also like to point out that we do ask them to tell us what your interests are, and they can check off what they want so that we can do what our members are looking for to fill our programs. We also ask them, tell us what Fergus Tennis can do to help you make your tennis session great. So our board does not make decisions in isolation. Our registration form requests input. We've used SurveyMonkey to gather info, telephone calls, emails to members throughout the season. There's a process if somebody has a complaint or a suggestion. I've been president for 2 years now and have never received a complaint. A wish list, yes, but never a complaint. Ms. Sangulano brought no ideas to the board. She had no emails to the club, did not attend the AGM where we beg members to come with their ideas, nothing in the suggestion box that we have in the clubhouse, and nothing written on her registration form. While we support her right to her opinion, we think we've shown that her opinion is not well supported by facts or current club planning or policies. It's our opinion that she's caused significant harm to the reputation of the Fergus Tennis Club and its directors with her accusations and innuendos, both in her presentation to Centre Wellington Council and to the local newspaper. The complaint and the newspaper article both mentioned ensuing conflicts on the courts, and I am only aware of 2 conflicts, and they were both 2 years ago, and they were both involving Ms. Sangulano. I'll just wrap up 1 paragraph. Although I appreciate the opportunity to show you who we are and what we're trying to accomplish, this whole issue is about 1 hour of play on Wednesday nights from 7 till 8. Everything else is at the discretion of the club as we abide by the agreement with the township. There is a process for anyone with a complaint or suggestion, 1 hour a week, where 8 rotating community members will be learning the game of tennis on the Sportsplex courts. What could be better than that? So, thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. And call Sylvana as her second delegation. Welcome, Sylvana.
Thank you.
We are very fortunate to have the amenities we do in our community. With the resurgence in tennis and increased interest in pickleball, demand for court space will increase. With population considerations, Centre Wellington is already operating at a deficit of 1 court. Although the addition of 3 courts is proposed by 2028 in the Parks and Recreation Plan, we must work with the tangibility of what we currently have. Over the years that I have been a member of the tennis club, and also having served as a board member, I have seen what makes things successful. Equitable court use is one of them. As it stands, the Tower Street courts are pre-booked by the tennis club and dominated by doubles events and leagues. This does not encourage singles or family play. These members are then forced to go to the Sportsplex, where the club has also pre-booked both courts for several programs over the course of the entire season. The use demands then become greater because both club members and members of the general public are competing for space. This has resulted in conflict. One must look at the Tower Street schedule combined with that of the Sportsplex because programming affects usage of all 5 courts. When you incorporate both schedules, the times to play during prime time are extremely limited. The program schedule changes on a whim, as history has shown. In fact, the schedule has already changed from when first presented at the CSAC committee meeting less than 2 weeks ago. Schedule C in the revised agreement does not respect the rights of the public, nor does it promote equitable access. If hours of programming are of minor significance, as outlined in the new agreement, why does the township feel the need to lock this into a long-term agreement? Why not just leave the regular hours intact? What is the point of Schedule C if it can be changed at any time with just a few signatures? In addition, the club is going against the agreement which allows for booking of special events, not regularly scheduled programs for the entire season. Not all members want to play competitive doubles or in organized leagues. Many just want to play for fun, be it with their spouse, children, or friends. Members have that right and shouldn't be forced to partake in a specific program in order to play. Council deferred consideration of the agreement to provide an opportunity for the various parties and stakeholders to continue discussions in an effort to resolve the concerns and consider solutions offered by the delegation, namely myself. This being the case, why did some community services staff meet with the tennis club president and perhaps other members of the board in isolation, while excluding the stakeholders, including myself being one of them? Does this not further perpetuate conflict? I recommend that the following be reflected in the agreement: that the tennis club should not book any programs at the Sportsplex, thus leaving courts available for member and general public use. This has worked in the past. I can attest to that, having been a member for almost 8 years. That pay-as-you-play hours coincide with front desk hours at the Sportsplex. That members and non-members sign in at the Sportsplex. A code of conduct must be written into the agreement. Schedule C, Terms of Permission Item 1, should be reviewed annually to coincide with each new tennis season. Thank you for supporting initiatives that foster pride in our community and enhance its amenities.
Thanks, Savannah. And so I will then turn the discussion to council, and just like what we did last time, discussion for council and for staff. Okay, Councilor McRae.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. This question goes to Carrie. Is this a forum where residents can attack other residents in council chambers? I found the presentation by Sheila Hogarth rather disturbing in terms of what I felt was a personal attack.
Yeah, I should have called that out. That's my job as a chair. This isn't the place for any kind of personal references or personal attacks, so you're right, I should have called that out. Apologize for that. Councillor Van Leeuwen.
Thank you. So if I can deal with this, it seems like it's we're dealing with cameras and things like that tonight with skateboard park and now tennis courts. when we speak about the safety in regards to the tennis club and how we deal with potential conflicts, whether no matter what it is, so I want to deal with it at a higher policy level. Do we have a required way that staff is supposed to deal with something? Let's talk about the fact that we have, let's say somebody's playing on the courts that didn't sign in, because really this is what it says. We need to have a policy that says if that happens, this is how it will how we will proceed. And that means not the new player wants to go on, but staff must actually have a process to follow to address it. How many staff do we have on those types of things? Have we been working on something like that?
Pat?
So the township has adopted the R-Zone Respect and Responsibility Policy, and those posters are up in our large recreation facilities, and it was directed at the CSAC committee for staff to come back and report on that and look at also including those posters up at the tennis courts. And it really does give a sort of step-by-step how to report, who to report. It's very generic, but the concept is if you're having problems, you are to report to a staff person. Is there always a staff person around? Yes. However, there's not always someone at the customer service desk, except during pay-as-you-play hours, which we do monitor. So if it's happening during pay-as-you-play hours, the concept is that they would go to the counter, and then there's a step-by-step process to deal with conflict. I hope that answers your question. If it happens during other hours, it's also posted here. If there's an incident, you can call the police and deal with it if it gets to that extreme. But there is a policy in place at the township called the R-Zone, Respect and Responsibility.
Councillor Finland?
Yeah, it does, and I guess my concern is that I want to make sure our staff are sufficiently trained or well enough to know that, okay, we've got a complaint now that they need to deal with it, versus having the resident or whoever it is feel like they're going to walk outside and kind of deal with this ahead of time. This goes across the board for everything. I really think that we need to talk about this for everything in that way. So
I guess the question then is, are you feeling confident that with this change in protocol and the wristbands, all that kind of stuff, are you confident that staff are going to be able to enforce it effectively?
I believe that the wristband policy would be something that we can enforce. Any situation that escalates beyond our township staff's capacity, which means they aren't to physically get involved or accept verbal abuse, they are trained to call the police and have them respond. So there is training with our staff on how to deal with escalating conflict or violence, and that can happen in the arena. And it can happen at the tennis courts, it can happen on the pool deck, and they're all trained in how to respond to that. So I'm confident that they have the training. I'm also confident the wristband policy will assist us to help members, help them police each other. In other words, hey, you've been on the court, what's your wrist say? It's my turn, and it's all going to be very, hopefully, friendly compliance. But if not, there is a procedure.
Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Kelly. Two questions for Pat, if I may. Question one is, Pat, what is the reason for a 10-year agreement when there's a 3-year revision period? Why not just make it 2 years or 3 years, given our community's growing and courts are scarce?
Questions. Okay. I guess the 10-year agreement comes to council. It's an overarching agreement explaining everything from insurance requirements, liability, who uses what, and then Schedule C outlines the details of time of use and the specific payment schedule and all of those kinds of things. So what we're suggesting here is that the overarching agreement is for 10 years, and that helps us plan and prepare for all types of use of recreation activities. We have long-term agreements for ground use activities, shared use activities. However, Schedule C will get reviewed every 3 years, as we're suggesting, and anything that needs to come to council for review would at that time.
And he just wants
Why
that.
not make the agreement 3 years? It accomplishes everything you mentioned.
I guess it's to save council time. There's so many agreements that we deal with. We try and keep them as long as we can. That's reasonable so that also the Fergus Tennis Club can have an assurance that they have care and control of their courts. So they invest money along with us for resurfacing, for new nets, for screens, and all sorts of other capital and operating activities at the courts. So it helps them also plan for the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's just the points that Pat mentioned, that, you know, we have an organization that's been here supporting tennis for many, many years. They're looking for a long-term commitment as well, because they're investing, they're spending money, they're sharing capital costs with our infrastructure, with those types of events. They're wanting to ensure that the township is going to have a long-term commitment and not just 1 and 2 year commitments saying, well, at the whim, they start putting stuff in and the township's going to be pulling out because in 1 or 2 years, things may change. So we do have a review process, but it's also looking at a long-term commitment. It's an organization that we've been working with successfully for many, many years. And this, in my term, is the first time we've ever had a situation or any issues raised with regards to the agreement and the operations of the tennis facilities in the township.
Second question, Kel.
Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Your Worship. Question 2 for Pat. Pat, Schedule C, item 1, subsection 2 and subsection 1. I have some concerns about 1 and 2, subsection 1 and subsection 2, where
Just wait till she finds it.
Schedule C.
item 1, subsection I and double I, Tower Street courts, Sportsplex courts. My concern is that during primetime tennis time, and it says right here in black and white that members' hours only at the Sportsplex court and members' hours only at the Tower Street court. And in so stating, we are effectively excluding non-members and members of the public from evening hours. And in the hot summer, people want to play in the evening. So could we amend this or change it, or what is the reason that all 5 courts are members only hours in the evenings in the summertime?
The hours that match public use are hours when our customer service desk is open. So in the evenings, the customer service desk closes at, I want to say, 8 p.m. And so there's no one there to take the $3 to allow the public to use the courts after 8 p.m. So that members have an access pass on, and that's how they access the courts after those hours.
Councillor Benoit?
Thank you. Actually, I would like to chime in there. Is there not a way that we can have pre-booked with tags? I'll be completely honest, I wouldn't make those hours, and I think that I'd like to try it this year.
Pat, sorry.
That's okay. So I guess our first step is to have better statistics as to how many are using and when. And we believe that the wristband policy will help us understand during our pay-as-you-play hours how many people are actually coming. Is there a huge demand for the court time? Yes, there would be an opportunity for pre-booked. However, right at this point, our software does not allow for that online booking. And it gets complicated when it's just in a book at the front and can you check, can you see? Whereas if it's an online visual thing, you can take a look and say, look, there's nobody on the courts. So we would like to work towards that, but our software doesn't permit it at this time. How much staff time do we want? I think we have to assess what the usage is first. If you want to use the courts in the evenings, then a membership is your way to do that. We were asked at CSAC, what about us creating some sort of membership for other people to use the Sportsplex courts in other times? Well, that's really what the tennis club permits outside of the pay-as-you-play hours. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, it's hard because we're doing a system change at work, and I'm tired of saying the system won't allow it because it's like, oh, that's hard, right? So I guess the problem is, yeah, these are the times, and I will be completely honest. We've actually bought tennis rackets. We've got to the point where we walked up and said, well, we don't want a membership, but we'd like to try this. But the time we put our kids to bed, it ain't going to work. And so essentially the system won't allow it, excludes us as residents to use it. And I think that's kind of the difficulty where I say, is there a solution that we can work? Even if we approve this with the ability to say, let's work on that detail, I'd be happy. I think that we should move forward with some type of approval, but with a section to say, well, how can we deal with, I would say number 2, sportsplex courts hours, members only, 7 to 11. If there's a way to pre-sign in.
So what you're, just to summarize, what you're looking for is some after-hours ability for the public to access
For non-members, yes.
the community, the sportsplex tennis courts.
Right.
Pat?
I'm just going to respond for clarity here. Can you put the slide up of May or June? So although it does state that it is confusing, members can use it anytime between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. The lights will turn on and they can use the courts after dark. Pay-as-you-play hours are from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday to Friday, except on Wednesdays when it's 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if a family wants to play tennis between 7 and 8 p.m. on Tuesday, the court is available for you to come and use on a drop-in basis. If you look at this schedule up here, in this bottom tennis, everywhere that it's gray, public can come and pay as you play. And maybe that doesn't answer your, and I'm not saying that your concern is relevant, and I've written it down, and it is something we should work towards, is you're asking that, can you book it from 7 to 8 p.m. so when you go with your family, you know the court's reserved and you can go and use it. Is that answering the
Yeah,
question?
I don't want to make it sound silly, but I don't want to go with my family. I just want to go with my wife.
Okay, well, with your wife then.
But what I'm hearing
So
from,
the point is, it's, you said that's
After
right.
8.
So I want to play, and that's why you said, this is when the kids are there. That's not when I need them. I'm looking at going, and I'm actually just rolling through. We did buy a membership section about a couple of years ago through a charity event, and through that event, we could never use it. We actually never redeemed it. One of the issues was, and I know this actually brings it sort of personal, but I look and I go, that could have worked where we could have. So I don't want to hold the whole process. I really think that if we could move the process and yet say, please, with revision, future revision to this portion, something like that.
so just to clarify, the revision that you're thinking about is for some access for public play after 8 o'clock.
Under
When-
section 2, Schedule C, section
Yes.
2, that would be my revision, my motion.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. Councillor McLean?
Thanks, Kelly. Actually, just to follow up on Steve's comment first, if there is a pre-booking, I think it shouldn't be just after 8. I think there should be pre-booking available throughout all of the pay-as-you-play schedules. So that's the first thing. But I just wanted to review, Pat, if I could, exactly my understanding of the whole payment process here. If I understand it correctly, the tennis club pays $250 a year to cover electricity. And they pay 1/4 of the maintenance of the courts.
Can I just reference the staff that's back here? Matt, can you come up here and answer these very detailed questions? Maintenance of the court. This is Matt's area
Yeah, okay.
of responsibility, so I'm just going to ask him to answer
Sure.
your question.
So talk a little bit about the contributions on both the operating, the maintenance, and the capital costs.
So, yeah, the capital costs, it's a breakdown of 75 and 25. Typically, we meet up a couple times a year. Usually, thank you. Usually we meet up in the early spring, and we also meet up in the fall. So we discuss obviously capital and what we're looking to do in the future, whether it's resurfacing the courts or repainting the courts, looking at nets, looking at windscreens. So those are sort of the capital projects that we do sit down and discuss. We also just sort of discuss our yearly maintenance that needs to be done at both courts. It's worked out well in the past since I've been involved, just from helping out with the windscreens to clean up. It's been a great working relationship with the tennis club through the years I've been working with them. So as far as my comment on the agreement, it's been a good agreement as far as the maintenance end of it goes, that's for sure.
I think the other thing to point out is this is not all that much different than minor hockey and minor soccer, who use our tax-supported facilities, and they have an agreement with booking. So it's not like it's a weird outlier here. Councillor McElwain?
Thanks. Just to follow up, because it is a bit different in that hockey clubs and such pay for rental of the facilities as well, on top of whatever else. So but I guess the point here, the point I'm trying to get to here is that the township is paying 75% of the major costs of doing this, or the club is only paying 25%, and they get 3 courts dedicated to them, and 2 courts they get access when other people don't. So it just seems to be kind of a bit of an unfair balance based upon who pays what. So, because if I look at the white in the schedule, as was mentioned earlier, although there's white sections there where there doesn't seem to be any club activities or league play scheduled, the average citizen still can't use it because it's at the Tower Street courts, and that's exclusive to the clubs. So it just seems to be that there's an awful lot of accessibility for club members based upon kind of minimal cost.
Matt, can you respond to that?
Sure. Just with the Tower Street tennis courts, the club, they pay for all the water and hydro. Basically, any of the operating piece down there, they take care of the Tower Street courts. Just an example where there was some capital work done there just last year, and the township, obviously we didn't have the funding there, but they made a little mini court out of their funds. So it's either like a warm-up area, and they've also, it's a size for a pickleball court as well. And that's I know they sat down with us, and we're hoping to get some funds from us. We didn't have the funds last year. They went ahead on their own as a club and added to the Tower Street location, which that area you do go by, and it's nice to see that area being used now, which it used to be a shuffleboard court area, which wasn't used, and it was a good idea on their part to move forward with that.
Councillor Van Loon?
Thank you. I would just one comment on Councillor McElwain's. I think we need to remember that the members of the club are also residents, and so if we are also keeping those fees down for the club members. I think that the club is a good thing. I don't think that we should get out of the idea that it's not a good thing. They are managing and processing through a lot of things that we would have to do ourselves. So it is a good piece for the community. If they're getting a cheaper, like if you want to say 25%, those members are residents as well. So therefore they'd pay through their taxes or through a club fee. So my concern is not in that regard. I really like what we have here. I think the aspect is for those introductory people who just want to kind of get a little bit of a feel of it before they join into the club membership. And I think that if I could speak personally, if I felt like I had a feel for it, the next logical step would be to join a club. So, but we need to get to that point where we say, okay, how do we allow access in those evening hours? So I would like to actually make a motion if you allow me to make something that made sense. But the motion would be that we accept the agreement as described with the exception of section C, number 2, to consider a way to allow pre-booking for non-members access to the courts. Something in that regard. And then I know that Pat's going to ask us for money for a new booking system. Just kidding.
I just wanted to mention that we can absolutely look at it. The feasibility might not be available in 2019 for us to implement that, but we will strive to look at a way for that. And I think that if the motion was just to strive towards that as the end goal, we absolutely can take a look at that piece for you. I can't guarantee it, but when I do come back, there might be costs involved. And further that, after we do that, that the township staff consider opportunities for pre-booking or booking beyond the 8 p.m. pay-as-you-play hours. And bring that back for council's consideration.
So where you said or, probably say and.
And, yeah.
Okay.
Staff consider opportunities for pre-booking or booking beyond. Booking beyond the pay-as-you-play hours. And booking during the pay-as-you-play hours. Beyond and during the pay-as-you-play hours.
Just change that or to an and.
And bring that back to council.
So we have, I want to get this motion and then,
But the motion basically excludes C. So what are you replacing C with?
Well, I want to review it every year, because, especially 1 year, because. Yeah, because we're just figuring it out. So in 1 year, we'll have some data on who's playing, and we could maybe then get the 10-year, like.
yeah, Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Thank you. I don't think we're excluding C in its entirety, Carrie, and that's it.
Okay.
We're excluding C. See those two little lines on there?
C1, 2,
Yeah.
C1,
C,
section
yeah, I. No, just kidding.
C1,
Yeah,
double I,
yeah. Sorry.
Sportsplex Court.
This is why I'm not the clerk.
Thank you, Lisa.
Wow, we're tag teaming today.
So from here,
Yeah, I started there.
okay. That the Council of the Township of Center Wellington accept the agreement with the exception of section C, II.
C1, double I.
You know what I mean. Yeah, we got that. And further, that township staff consider opportunities for pre-booking and booking beyond the pay-as-you-play hours
You never let me finish.
and booking during the P.
And booking during the play as you pay.
And booking during the play-as-you-pay.
Pay as you play. Opportunities for pre-booking beyond the, why can't we just say pre-booking the
Yeah,
play?
exactly.
The pay as you play,
Pre-booking in during the pay-as-you-play.
yeah.
He wants to play after 8.
And beyond.
And pre-booking during the play.
Pat?
So the way it's reading right now is we're taking out section 1.II. We have to adopt it with section 1.II. And further that, we will come back with options to look at these other things. We need that in there right now to identify who plays when as we open the courts in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
So we need it in there as is, so that's why I was suggesting to keep the first part of the motion together and then ask us to consider section 1, Schedule C, section 1.II for future and come back.
And
Okay.
are we leaving the term at 10 years? I thought I heard.
Well, yeah, but let's deal with this first, and then we have something else on the floor.
Okay, all right, but if we're going to come back with recommendations, then if we make it for a 3-year, we should probably have this only as a 1 year, or that you come back partway through this year with those recommendations.
can we keep the 10-year and then just do this, as we were gonna come back and do the C in 3 years, make that 1 year instead of 3 years?
Yep.
1 year.
The change to the original motion is that instead of reviewing Schedule C every 3 years, you review Schedule C every year.
Yeah.
Or in
Well,
1 year.
In 1 year, yeah, that's what I was saying. That's Van Nuys?
Sorry, and that gives staff direction as to what we're looking for on it as well, in that review. And I just want to make one comment. It is very difficult to, even if you were to stop by and you wanted to book at 5 o'clock, because you know you're going to come back and drive into town at 8, we have to consider the residents, some do actually have to drive in. And to just pop in and realize the courts are full doesn't always work in life. So
Yeah, I
I
think
really,
that's
really
what-
appreciate this process.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
good. Do we have a motion? It's basically what Pat said, but I don't think we need to say what Pat said, can we? With direction to staff to do. I know, that's why I'm trying to figure it out. You can make an effort, yeah.
That the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a 10-year use of grounds agreement between the township and the Fergus Tennis Club for the use of the Tower Street courts and the Sportsplex tennis courts. And further that, staff are directed to come back, with the exception that Schedule C will be reviewed by council in 1 year, and staff will, and then it goes into review Schedule C 1.11 to consider opportunities to book courts in advance, both during pay-as-you-play and other hours.
Yeah. Is that what you meant when you moved a motion? Seconder for that? Councillor Kittress?
Did you get that, Carrie? No, but. Okay.
All in
Do you
favor?
want me to scribble it?
And that, all opposed? And that's carried. Kittress seconded it. Okay, that's great. So we'll make sure the wording is great on that. 10-3, thanks for everybody for coming out. Thanks for the delegations and sticking around for the whole time. Okay, so 10-3, Riverfest, Elora, Bissell Park. And we have a recommendation there. Do you want to speak to that and provide some highlights, Dorothy?
Dorothy's coming up.
I know, that's why I was talking to her. You have anything to add to it, or just take questions?
No, it's the same report that we take annually.
Dorothy?
It's to amplify.
Just hit your.
Sorry. It's the same report we take annually. It's to amplify music in the park during August 16, 17, and 18. Between the hours of 3 and 11 on Friday, between noon and 11:30 on Saturday, and between noon and 11 p.m. on Sunday. So there's another recommendation to grant an exception from the bylaw for the noise control on the Saturday, from 11 to 11:30. So that's the only, and this is the same recommendation they make annually.
Anything from council? Okay, I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington authorizes Riverfest Elora to be held in Bissell Park with amplification of music between 3 p.m. and 11 p.m. on Friday, August the 16th, and 12 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on Saturday, August the 17th, and between 12 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the Sunday, August the 18th, subject to the organizers planning and implementing the requirements to ensure public safety as required by the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario Provincial Police, and the Central Wellington Municipal Alcohol Policy, and that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington approves Riverfest Elora schedule for the third weekend in Bissell Park as a significant municipal event to ensure, in order to serve and sell alcohol during the event, and that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington grants an exemption from bylaw 5001-05, the Township Noise Control Bylaw, from 11 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. on Saturday night. Move that recommendation, Councillor McElwain, second by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that is carried. 10-4, Part Lock Control Bylaw. Report from Managing Director of Planning and Development. You haven't had too much to do yet today, Brett.
personal, yes.
Passion, there's a lot of passion.
Part law control exemption bylaw, this is the means by which townhouse blocks are divided, and these 4 blocks that are blocks 98, 99, 100, and 101 in Plan 61M225. That is Phase 2 of Summerfields. So we approve the bylaw, pass the bylaw, it goes to the county of Wellington approves it, it gets registered on title, and then the individual townhouse units can be sold.
Any questions from council? Okay, read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington give 3 readings to a bylaw to exempt blocks 98, 99, 100, and 101 of Plan 61M-225 from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. Move for that recommendation, Councillor McElwain, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that's carried. Municipal concurrence for a proposed telecommunications tower. We've seen this before.
Right, thank you, Mayor Linton. For those who are new to council, there is a process where Industry Canada regulates the telecommunication industry in Canada, and they are the approval authority for telecommunication towers. This is, in this case, this is a cell phone tower that's proposed. And as part of the process, the proponent requests what's called municipal concurrence. So I do have Evan Turinen, he's from Fontour International, who are consultants that are hired by Signum Wireless, and they're asking for our concurrence for a tower that's located at 5951 Highway 6 in the former township of Nickel. So that is just south of Ennetville. And so the municipality can either grant concurrence, give concurrence, which is option 1, or we can deny concurrence. If we deny concurrence, Industry Canada can still approve the tower because they're the approval authority. In this particular case, the proponent has followed the Industry Canada protocol. It's a tower that's 45 meters in height, self-supported. Takes up about 100 square meters on the ground. They have identified that there's a coverage issue. That's the justification for the site, and it's to provide better coverage in that area along Highway 6, heavy traveled road. The more users on the road, the more people in cars, the weaker the cell signal, because the more users takes up the cell power. So they've done their consultation in accordance with the Industry Canada. They contact the municipal authority. They do a public notice, which is again prescribed by Industry Canada. They're required to follow up with people that make comments and respond, and they've done that. So once they've gone through that process, in this particular case, there were no objections to the site. They got some correspondence asking questions and raising concern about their justification report, which they've responded to, and it's all attached, the way they responded. So you have their justification report in the package, their concurrence request, and their summary of the public consultation. So from the staff point of view, there's no reason not to concur, but again, it's in council's hands to concur or not.
Well, council has to like this. We have an option.
You have options.
Councilor McCray.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. I just have a question related to distance to nearest residential. In their documents, they indicate the nearest dwelling is 315 meters away. I'm just curious, what is the minimum distance that you need to be away from a building? Is it 120 meters?
Township doesn't regulate that, so Evan could answer a question if there is a minimum distance. I don't believe there is one, but they have. We do not have the ability to have rules because it's federally regulated. So,
Yeah, I just Because the other question I have is, right next to it is the Pine Tree Pet Center. And is that not a residence as well? Which is within 215 meters of the proposed location.
Yeah, I'm assuming references to off-site.
Yeah, come on, you can come up. Yeah, come on up, yep. And you can answer those two questions there. Thanks, Evan. Yeah.
Thank you. So in regards to minimum distance from residence, there is no set minimum distance. In regards to specifically that residence, the pet center is our landlord. So in the report, I wrote a minimum distance to the next nearest residence. As that residence understands the tower coming, they signed the lease with us.
Thanks, that helps. Councilor McElwain?
Thanks, Shirley. Just, you have a public consultation that you have to do, I believe. I'm just curious why we're doing this before the public consultation. Would it not be better to, in case there is public feedback, that we get that?
The public consultation has already happened.
In?
The public consultation already happened.
Oh, it did already happen?
Yeah.
Okay, it didn't read that way in the report here, so it already happened and we just didn't know about it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as I say, in this case, there were no comments received from anyone in the public, no objections. So.
Councilor Kidd?
I don't think you can answer this question. I just wanted to ask that. I was just wondering, is there any like 5G on this? Like, is that the power? Like, I've heard some things about that.
Not for this tower specifically. No, nothing planned. Our the carrier we're in talks with immediately is ExploreNet, but we're in talks with all the cell phone carriers right now as well.
So would it be in the future maybe, or?
There is a chance, yes. I'm not sure on the technical aspects of deploying 5G, especially. I don't think many engineers are sure yet either how it will be deployed.
I guess the next one's for Brett.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, Councilor Kittrus?
I was wondering, in the advent of 5G being introduced, would this be reviewed again, or is this just like a final deal?
I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, there are some concerns about 5G in terms of health concerns and implications, and so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speculate on what the industry is going to do in the future with 5G, but I'm assuming Industry Canada will continue to be the regulator and they'll establish the rules that apply to 5G. Whether it means there's a new protocol, I'm guessing that'll be the case once it's rolled out. But
Councilor McElwain?
I could probably make a little bit of a comment here. I mean, when 5G comes out, number one, it'll be years before we get rid of 4G, so the big cell towers we have today will still be in use for quite a long time in the future. But when 5G is predominant, they're much smaller towers and much more frequent, so they're all over the place, not just huge cell towers here and there and everywhere kind of thing. So the 5G towers are small towers and much closer together, were for different bandwidth or band length kind of thing.
Okay, any other questions from council? Well, let's start with option one. We'll read that, see if that works, and then we'll go on to option two after that, if it doesn't. Recommendation that the Council of the Township Center Wellington provides municipal concurrence for a proposed telecommunications tower by Signum Wireless at 5951 Highway 6, former Township of Nickel. Move for that recommendation. Councilor Dunsmore, seconded by Councilor McCrae. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Evan. Hope you found the whole council meeting riveting. 10.6, appointment to the Grand River Nonprofit Housing Corporation You do have a package there. I'll read the recommendations, and you can ask Lisa any questions afterwards. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Center Wellington confirm the appointments of Judith Anderson and Daryl Evans as tenant directors and Joseph W. Coughlin, A.E. Davidson, and Alexander Cleghorn as Class A directors for the Grand River Nonprofit Housing Corporations Board. Move for that recommendation. Councillor Kittredge, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore. Any questions about that one? All in favor? And that's carried. 10.7, vacant and excess land property tax subclass. A report from our Managing Director of Corporate Services. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. This report addresses two areas, the vacant unit rebate program and the vacant and excess land property tax subclass. So I'll talk about the vacant unit rebate program first. This is a program where if a property has a vacant unit for at least 90 days, they can apply for a rebate. The rebate application comes through the township, and commercial properties would be entitled to a 30% rebate, industrial properties a 35% rebate, based on the time that the unit was vacant. I've noted some advantages and disadvantages to the program on page 2 of my report. While it does provide industrial commercial properties with assistance during economic downturn, there's a number of disadvantages, such as the potential for duplication of the rebates, encouraging properties to remain vacant, no similar rebates for residential properties, and the fact that the rebate itself is significantly subsidized through residential properties. This program, we're recommending the elimination of this program for the 2019 taxation year. To do this, we must have a resolution of council, and then it gets submitted by the County of Wellington to the province to eliminate the program on our behalf. We've been entitled to do this since 2017, and we're bringing it forward this year as part of the 2019 taxation process. The second piece is the vacant excess land property tax subclass, which I know is a mouthful, but this relates to tax policy, which is set by the county on an annual basis. They basically set policy and get it approved at county council during April, and then we use that tax policy to set tax rates that come forward to you in May every year. Part of that tax policy is setting the reduction for any class, any properties within the subclass of vacant and excess land, and it's the same percentage discounts in this case, 30% for commercial, 35% for industrial. And basically in this case, if MPAC deems you to be eligible for that subclass, you're automatically getting the discounted taxation rate. The county is proposing elimination of the reductions within these subclasses. They are going through a public consultation process. They had a public meeting already, and it's going to county council this Thursday. We've attached the county report from last year, as well as the advertisement that went in the Wellington Advertiser to my report. And again, the county is proposing elimination, and they're looking for resolutions from all of the lower tier municipalities to support that. The advantages, disadvantages of that program are very similar to the vacant unit rebate. And just to clarify, the vacant unit rebate talks about vacant units, where vacant excess land talks about empty land, basically, and rebates associated with each. We did discuss both of these policy items with the Economic Development Task Force, and they were in agreement with elimination of both. Most of the lower tier municipalities are moving this way as well, with the exception of a few municipalities, including the vacant unit rebate within their CIP program. So with that, we're asking council to eliminate the vacant unit rebate program effective for the 2019 taxation year, which is the program that we're in control of. And we're asking to support the elimination of the vacant and excess land tax subclass reductions effective for the 2019 taxation year, which is a county policy initiative. I know that was a mouthful.
Just a quick update. So that recommendation from county did pass the AF and got the approval of the AF and HR committee, and it will be presented to council on Thursday. And the thinking behind it was, why are we providing incentives for people, for businesses not to develop their land? It seemed a bit counterintuitive, and that was the nature of the discussion that we had with the Economic Development Task Force as well. Councilor McElwain?
Thanks, Kelly. Does this apply then to any, basically, brownfield, either vacant building or vacant property that is probably paying less taxes today because they're brownfield? Would their taxes be going up now?
Yes, it would apply to, under the vacant unit rebate program, if the stats within my report show that the numbers for the vacant unit rebate program are going down from year to year, from 14 applications in 2016 down to 5 applications last year. So those could be brownfield, but basically there are people who have applied that had vacant units for at least 90 days throughout the year. The vacant access land, again, it's any land deemed by impact to be in vacant or in access and could relate to brownfield, yes. But we do have other benefits through the CIP program that relate to brownfields that those property owners could apply for.
Councilor Kitchen?
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that you put out advertisement. We know which properties are vacant. And so have those people been contacted so they know that, because they've had, this program's been in place for 20 years, like all of a sudden did they have a chance to sort of say anything or anything?
I can't say what communication went through to the county, but we have had a few property owners talk to us specifically, and they wanted to know what the township's position was on this, and we did mention that a report was coming forward to council outlining that we're recommending the elimination of these programs. Didn't have a huge response to that other than, okay, thank you for the information. So there wasn't really a big impact to this. It really is quite a minor impact in relation to the total taxation amount for each property.
Okay, I read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington eliminate the vacant unit rebate program effective for the 2019 taxation year, and that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington support the elimination of the vacant and excess land property tax subclass tax reductions effective for the 2019 taxation year. Move for that recommendation, Councilor Dunsmore, seconded Councilor Van Leeuwen. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Dan. Moving on to federal gas tax funding.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. We just recently found out that the federal government is topping up their federal gas tax fund with a one-time transfer of $2.2 billion. Ontario's share of that is approximately $800 million, and Center Wellington's share of that is just over $850,000. We are in receipt of the $850,000 as a top-up for 2019, and it is based on what we received in 2018, which was the $850,000. Given that preliminary planning on the 2020 budget is about to take place at a staff level, and we will be providing a budget timeline to council in the near future about staff council meetings on the budget. We are proposing that this 2019 top-up amount of federal gas tax funding be deferred to the 2020 capital budget discussions. Just as a point of interest, we received $855,000 and change in 2018. We received $855,000 and change for 2019 before the top-up. And for 2020, it's to remain at $855,000. So for the 2020 budget, we would have the $855,000 normal allocation plus the $850,000 top-up, which would be $1.7 million in federal gas tax funding for the 2020 budget. And then the funding allocations are anticipated to go up to roughly $932,000 by 2023, which is the end of the contract with the federal government. So we are proposing to defer decisions on this top-up to the 2020 budget.
So basically put it in a safe place and then have discussions about it with council during the budget process.
Yeah, we're obligated to keep a gas tax reserve fund, so it would be put in there until we decide what we're going to do with it.
Questions from council? Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Not really a question. I would like to say this is good news. I think somebody should say that. And I also want to remember that like this is also very restricted monies when it's gas tax. We have to use it in certain areas and show that, right? So it's not like we can just spend anywhere. So it is great news, and I look forward to actually planning to use it in an appropriate spot. So good, thanks.
Councillor Kitchers?
What exactly can this money be used for?
Councillor Van Leeuwen is correct. There is a very restrictive use of this program. The township in the past have dedicated this to roads-related work, but I believe I outlined the eligible costs within my report. So other eligible costs: roads, bridges, transit, water, wastewater, solid waste, community energy, capacity building. That was the areas that since inception, and then it was expanded in 2014 to include broadband, brownfield redevelopment, sport, recreation, culture, tourism, and disaster mitigation. But within each of those categories, there are further restrictions as in terms of how you can actually use it.
Councillor Kitchers?
I'd like to move that we consider the use of these funds next year for the concerns that the delegations brought earlier this year in their budget process. That was the bridges in Ward 2 and 1, and also a paving of First Line. I'd like to make a motion that these monies be considered for those projects for next year.
Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Can I make a comment on that motion?
Oh, just a sec. Okay, seconder for that. Councillor McElwain, comments about that motion?
Not comment. I'd be very, I don't know if I want to deal with this at this level, and if that's the case, we should consider as council that maybe we should consider the delegations from 2017 and maybe the delegations from 2016 and maybe the 2015 prior to the 2018. So it's more of a point to say, like, there's been a lot of delegations in the past and they've been at the table a long time. So if we're going to go that process, I think we should be very careful. So I think we should deal with it in budget time.
I think that's the way that, I mean, my comments, that's the way that we always do it, is everything is up for discussion. So that includes the projects that we had the delegations on, and it includes all the projects from the previous 10 years of delegations, as well as everything else that we have in our asset management plan. So that's all part of the budget process. Councillor Dunsmore?
If we put it in the reserve fund and we're having budget meetings shortly, we can allocate the funds to roads and divide the projects up based on past history as well. Because I don't have the history from 14, 15, and 16, but I do have history now with people calling about the roads. So why don't we just park it, and then when we start having the budgets, we'll divide it up over the roads across the township.
Councillor McCrae?
I agree as well with both Councillor Van Leeuwen and Councillor Dunsmore that let's just park it until we actually get into the budget discussions and see what sort of things we're dealing with in the budget.
Councillor Kitchers?
The reason I make this motion is because when people come as a delegation, they don't always expect that something be done. But if they continuously come as delegations, and some of them have come for multiple years, there is a whole thing that we are engaging with, and that their efforts are concerns be considered. And I think that the message that we should be sending is that coming as a delegation is a useful and a good process where they can be heard. And, you know, for some of the areas where there was bridges, you know, it's a safety concern. And I think that it's a win-win where we can say that we are considering these projects. We got this extra gas tax, we can announce it. It's a win-win where everyone, this is extra cash, and they were considered, and that feedback to citizens is beneficial to thinking that their voice counts. And I think that that's something, a worthy message. Also in our strategic plan, roads and bridges were the primary. It wasn't for other things. And so I think that those delegations were concerned about those things and not other aspects.
And I think all of us recognize that we have a lot of roads and bridges. I mean, I don't think that delegations come expecting for us to write a check to them. I mean, everything has to go through the right process, right? So everything is taken into consideration during the budget process, and that's where the direction should be given, with all of council looking at all these funds coming in a holistic way. Overall, this is really good news. It provides money that we never knew we were going to have into the budget process. I just really feel like we should be doing it in a very holistic way and looking at all the different factors. So I'd prefer to put this in the reserve, not touch it, and have a really very wholesome budget process like we've talked about in our strategic planning process, and go through the process that way. I think that's the best way to do it. Pardon? I know we're discussing that motion. Yep. Yeah. Any other discussions regarding that motion? Okay, all in favor of the motion as, I should read it back.
Well, I've sort of got two versions of it. Use the second version.
Okay, so a motion that the Township of Center Wellington direct that the projects put forth in the 2019 delegations, bridges in Ward 1 and Ward 2, paving a first line, be considered for the federal gas tax funding for 2019. Anybody want to add to that? That's what I said. Yep. Okay, call to question. All in favor of that? Opposed? And that's defeated. So now we go back to the original recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington approve the allocation for $8,500 $850,197 in additional federal gas tax funding in 2019 to the gas tax reserve fund, and that the allocation of these funds to specific capital projects be determined as part of the 2020 budget process. Move for that recommendation. Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Dan. Moving on to recommendation for an award for Salem Bridge. Sidewalks, water main extension, and temporary relocation of the LPS force main.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Council will recall we discussed this at the March council meeting, where council gave approval to award this at the tender award committee, subject to being within budget allocations. We have a few aspects of the tender results that are not within budget allocations, so we're coming back to council for approval. So just in summary, Wellington County is replacing the Salem Bridge over the Irvin Creek. And with that, there are township-related components related to sidewalks, the low-pressure sanitary system, and water main extension. The county did issue a tender on this. We have a map in attachment B to my report that shows the location of the work being done. The tender response came from 3 different companies, the lowest being from McLean Taylor. I've outlined on page 2 of my report the township-specific components of the tender results that total $1.18 million. The detailed financial analysis that takes that and other anticipated costs to the township are shown within attachment A. And it's showing that the road sidewalk component is roughly $79,000 over budget. The water main extension piece is $214,000 under budget. And the sanitary LPS relocation component is around $60,000 over budget, netting to a net under budget of about $75,000. So staff are recommending award. I believe the county is awarding this at Thursday's council meeting this week. Staff are recommending the township components being awarded as part of the county tender to McLean Taylor, and that the funds, additional funds be allocated as part of the 2020 budget process. And the reason why we're suggesting that is because through discussions with the county's engineer, Triton Engineering, it's been determined that the work will be done through the majority of 2019, and that the township costs probably will not be incurred until 2020. So we have time to see how the project goes, how much of the contingency are we actually going to use, what is the specific allocation of costs between us and the county, and get that flushed out before we determine exactly how much additional funds we need, if any. So we're recommending approval and that we would reconcile the budget as part of the 2020 budget process.
Question from council? Okay, read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington award the township components of county tender CW 2019-008, bridge replacement structure 018050, Wellington Road 18, Salem Bridge, to McLean Taylor Construction Limited, and that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington directs staff to include additional funds as discussed in report COR 2019-28 dated April 23rd, 2019 to this project through the 2020 budget process. Move for that recommendation. Councilor McCray, seconded by Councilor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, 1010, recommendation for award RFT 1119.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. This relates to the replacement of structure 10P located on the 4th line east in former township of Pilkington. Just in background here, the township participated in a pre-qualification process for bridge and culvert contractors earlier this year, which really gave us more visibility to bridge contractors in the province. And staff feel really significantly enhanced our response to this tender and hopefully future tenders, which is very good news. We had 7 responses and 29 registered plan takers, which is quite significant given bridge contractors, at least since I've started at Center Wellington over the last 2 years. To have 7 responses is pretty good. Low bid is from Esposito Brothers Construction Limited, $993,212.28 plus HST. Normally, bids within budget and under $1 million can be awarded by the Tender Award Committee, but the non-rebate HST puts us over $1 million, so we had to come to council for approval. Looking at the financial implications, if you look at the costs incurred to date, tender results, contract administration costs, and non-rebate HST, total anticipated costs of the projects are just over $1.1 million. Total budget of $1.22 million, which means we are under budget by roughly $112,000, which is really good news. So we're suggesting award to the Esposito Brothers Construction Limited in the amount of $993,212.28, including contingency but excluding HST.
Discussion from Councilor McCray.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Are terms in place to ensure that if Esposito Brothers runs into difficulties and realize they underbid, that they can't come back and nickel and dime us for more?
Yes, we have a bond in place with them, so we're covered in that sense.
Okay, read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington award a request for tender 11-19 regarding the replacement of structure 10P to Esposito Brothers Construction Limited in the amount of $993,212.28, including contingency and exclusive of HST. Move for that recommendation. Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor Kittrus. All in favor? And that is carried. On to playgrounds.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. This is looking at the award of request for proposal 20-19 relating to playground installations for 2019. This proposal looked at 3 different sites. Playground on Gibbons Drive Park in Fergus was site 1. Site 2 is a playground on Revel Drive Park in Fergus. And site 3 is a playground on Tate Crescent Park in Fergus. All requests for proposals must come to council for award if they are over $10,000. We had 11 registered plan takers, bids from 3 different firms. We have a selection committee, as we do with all proposals, to evaluate the proposals on a different criteria, which are outlined in my report. Managing Director of Community Services, the Urban Forestry Project Manager, and the Manager of Parks and Facilities Operations represented our selection committee in this case. For all 3 sites, the selection committee is recommending award to Open Space Solutions, Inc. Site 1, just over $64,000, Site 2, just over $58,000, and Site 3, combined playground and landscaping of just over $89,000. You'll see within the attachments to my report, we have the actual locations of each park in attachment A. We have renderings of each playground structure within attachment B. And we have the financial analysis in attachment C. Attachment C shows that site 1, Gibbons Drive, is within budget allocations. Site 2, which is Revel Drive, is within budget allocations. The playground structure for Tate Crescent is within budget allocations, but the landscaping for Tate Crescent is over by approximately $11,000. So what we are proposing is award the contract and adjust the funding for the landscaping component of that park as outlined in my report. This is 90% funded through development charges. So we can fund approximately $9,900 of that overage through development charges and the remaining $1,100 from general capital reserves.
Thanks, Dan. This is really good news. 3 new parks in Fergus. Questions from council? Councilor Kittrus?
This Gibbons one that's a brand new park, isn't it?
It's a brand new playground.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that park's already existing? Okay, thanks.
The playground, so just to confirm, the playground is new, the park is old?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I'll read Councilor McCray?
Thank you, Mayor Linton. I'm just curious about the Tate Crescent landscaping, why it went over estimated cost?
I'm going to ask Matt to... I guess the short answer is that we're always estimating when we're looking at how much work has to be done and putting the budgets together. And it's replacing an old park, so we have to remove all of the park that's there and build new. So I think that's a lot of what the work that's getting done. I don't know if you have anything to add. I can't tell you why it went over, but those were the prices that came in. We just underestimated, I think, the overall work.
Yeah, just what Pat said, it was the demolition and also the concrete work that's going to be going on, the concrete curbing around the play unit itself.
Okay, I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington award request for proposal 20-19 related to playground installation for 2019 as follow. Site 1, Gibbons Drive Park in Fergus to Open Space Solutions, Inc. at a contract price of $64,656.31, exclusive of HST. Site 2, Revel Drive Park, Fergus to Open Space Solutions, Inc. at a contract price of $58,108.06, exclusive of HST. Site 3, Tate Crescent Park, Fergus, to Open Space Solutions, Inc. at a contract price of $89,344.96, exclusive of HST, and that the funding for these projects be amended as outlined in Report COR 2019-30, dated April 23rd, 2019. Move for that recommendation. Councillor McLean, second by Councillor McCray. All in favor? And that's carried. 10.2, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Rural and Northern Community Stream. What's that all about? Director of Infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Linton, members of council. So just recently, this new grant program was announced by the province. It's a combined effort of the federal government and the province. And essentially they're advertising that $250 million is available over a 10-year period. And its focus is on road, bridge, air, and marine infrastructure assets. So the air and marine is out, unless we're building a marina at Lake Bellwood. But we were definitely interested in the road and bridge aspect to this grant. And basically, the guidelines, which are presented in Attachment A, talk about essentially a cap of $5 million. So the maximum grant application could be $5 million, and that the grant funding would be broken down 50% federal, 33 1/3 provincial, and then 16 2/3% municipal contribution. And so we've looked at this in a fair bit of detail. There was a webinar that some of us attended last week, just kind of talking about the application process, the form itself, and just some of the projects that they're looking to fund. The guideline also talks about the assessment criteria, how they're going to evaluate applications, and the type of projects that they're looking to fund. And really, I think they're trying to look for projects that are kind of more of an economic driver within a community, so, or a major economic driver, and while addressing health and safety risk. And so staff looked at 4 different projects that are in the capital forecast. We've got 24P replacement on 3rd line, Middlebrook Road resurfacing. We looked at Side Road 4 asphalt resurfacing. And then we also looked at 8th line asphalt resurfacing. So the first 3 are scheduled. They're in the capital forecast for 2020 as it currently stands. 8th line is kind of phased over a few years from 2022 to 2024. We also looked at traffic count data, our road condition assessment data that we collected in 2017 from the update to the road condition assessment. We also have been receiving vehicle damage claims on some of these roads too, so we had that data to refer to as well. So just in light of the criteria of projects, or the criteria for projects looking to be funded, and just the nature of the projects, staff are recommending that council approve proceeding with the asphalt resurfacing of 8th line through this grant program. It's although it's out a few years in the capital forecast, there's some urgent needs with 8th line, particularly south of 21, County Road 21, essentially down to Side Road 12. That section has pretty much totally failed and is in really poor shape. So staff are recommending, looking at a section of 8th line. We're really still trying to ascertain the amount of a grant to apply for. Really, if you look at $250 million, again, sounds like a lot, but you divide that by 10 years, we're down to $25 million per year. There's 300 and some municipalities that are all competing for that same amount of money. So there may not be as much funding as what they're saying here per municipality. So we're just trying to essentially right size the grant application in order to increase our chances of success. So so that's still being assessed, but we are looking for support to proceed with applying for a grant for 8th line in Pilkington. So be happy to take any questions. Or if Andy wants to add.
Just a couple of points to add to Collins. So we've seen from the provincial government in particular grants being awarded to municipalities that have been moving forward with projects that are a little bit beyond the next year type thing. They want some success showing that their funding has helped move a project ahead substantially compared to where it was before. So that's part of the decision that want our recommendation. And second of all, previous councils, not just last council, previous councils that even have had a number of discussions about the 8th line and with regards to that road is substantially being used by other residents outside of our community in the gravel industry. And so we thought that would be a good opportunity to use less taxpayers' money to fix a road that's being used and not putting all that burden where we're going to have to fix that road in the short term, and therefore we're receiving provincial and federal government to upgrade a road that would not be just burdened by the township taxpayers.
Councillor McCray.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. Just addressing Councillor Kittrus's concerns about investing more in rural roads, I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to try and get some additional money because I know 8th line has a notorious reputation. And I've had numerous residents speaking to me about concerns about driving along that and allowing their children to drive along it as well. So if we can win the money, kudos to the team that pulls it together.
Anything else from council? Okay, I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington endorse the asphalt resurfacing of high priority segments of the 8th line in former Pilkington Township for a grant under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Rural and Northern Community Stream, and that council directs staff to report back to council through the 2020 capital budget on the township portion of the grant should the application for funding be successful. Move for that recommendation. Councillor McCray, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that's carried. It's nice to see actually the ability to put in some requests for funding from the other orders of government. That doesn't happen too often anymore. Provincial Modernization Grant, report from our CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. So just briefly, I just want to highlight a couple of points within the report. So this new provincial modernization grant was again new funding coming from the province that was not advised previously. We did receive a letter on March 20th from the Minister, Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs, and 405 municipalities have received a similar letter to a one-time distribution of over $200 million, specifically for small and rural municipalities. It's our understanding that all sizes of municipalities have received some funding. The intent is to reduce expenditures for growth in the longer term. So Centre Wellington is receiving $618,175. The county receives $725,000.